Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Hey everybody, my name is Zach Golden. Welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. Happy to be here with y'all today. Another exciting episode coming up. Sorry we weren't able to do a show last week, as I'm sure those of you who are members and patrons are aware. The flyover didn't happen until late on Sunday last week, so it was a bit out of the time window where we would normally do a show. So ended up doing one in the Discord channel. For those of you who are members, probably know about that. The show and tell studio, ended up doing a show in there instead. So yeah, again, apologies for that, but got a lot to catch up on this week, as you can imagine. Happy to be here again, and thank you for joining us today. We're also going to have BJ with us. BJ, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Zach, good to be here again. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Yeah, like you said, with not getting an actual live show for after last week and all the activity this week, man, it feels like there's probably about a month's worth of work in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. It's always a little bit difficult for me sometimes when I'm coming back from like being off for 2 weeks, trying to catch up on everything. And this was no exception. There's so much going on, especially having kind of minimal time to go through everything, but glad you're here to help out. And we're also going to have Alex with us, who will chime in from time to time. Alex, thanks for being here.
No problem. Happy Sunday to everybody. And yeah, like Zach and BJ said, there's a ton of new interesting developments.
Yeah, and I do see a mention in the chat, so I'll just bring it up. Brian Murphy says Discord is too confusing. You know, sometimes that's true. They do tend to update things that make it a little bit harder to use. I've been going through that issue myself today. So on that note, hopefully everything goes smoothly. I am using a different microphone today as well too, so hopefully I'm coming through clear for all of y'all in the chat. If not, I will just keep an eye on the chat and see if I need to make any adjustments. But last but not least, I should also mention that we have Astro Joe with us handling questions and donations. Welcome, Astro Joe.
Thank you very much, Zach. Always a pleasure to share the stream with you and BJ and Alex. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, of course. And really glad we were able to get a flyover in this week because, as y'all can tell, it was a bit cloudy and hazy out there. But we're able to pull it off, so that was lovely. And as most of y'all know, this morning we did have a static fire test of Booster 15, which was very interesting actually because not only was it super early, but it's just you can kind of tell how much SpaceX is rushing right now. I believe was it yesterday that Booster 15 got to the pad, or the day before, I can't remember. But either way, when they rolled it out, it was late at night and really foggy outside, so it was kind of tough to see for most of the cameras. And then by the time the sun came up, it was already on the pad. So very, very fast as far as how quickly they're moving through all these operations now that they've finally been able to do so, because as y'all will see, they really haven't had the ability to get the booster to pad A until I guess just the last few days. The path was pretty much blocked by construction. So as soon as they got some drivable area, they moved the booster to the pad and got straight to that static fire testing. I imagine we'll probably see it move back to the Mega Bay probably before the day's over, honestly. But on that note, let's go ahead and check out the static fire from this morning. I did post a clip from NASA spaceflight this morning, so we'll go ahead and check that out. Oh, let me go ahead and restart this. And I don't know, should I put the audio in with this? You know, I'm not going to do that because I've been struggling with Discord this morning, so. But this was an excellent view from NASA spaceflight. Is one of the few angles where you're actually able to see the entire test without the exhaust plume pretty much getting in the way of it. Sometimes getting straight on with the leg is enough, but more often than not, you'll still have the plume come back and curl around in front of it. So that was an excellent view, and of course, Twitter murdered the quality. Maybe that's partially my fault for uploading it in 720p, but still a great angle. So yeah, moving very quickly. I'm sure some of y'all are gonna ask about it, so we'll probably just go ahead and address it right now. So after the test was over, I think this was probably just within the last like 20-30 minutes, there was some additional venting coming from the booster, which I figure we may as well address right now. So this was, as you can tell, 11:40 a.m., so not too long ago. But this was I think there was at least 15 of these, I think I was told.
Yeah, I think in the end it was probably closer to 20 to 24 or so. It started about every 20 seconds, and towards the end they were doing it every 10 seconds or so. Is
Right.
A lot of it.
Yeah, so this is actually coming from a vent on the bottom of the booster. Basically, something they use in flight to dump liquid oxygen. They actually do this pretty much all the time, or at least now that they've moved on to catching boosters. Shortly after the boost back burn is over, you'll see them start to dump liquid oxygen. So I guess there was some question on whether or not this was something that was intentional. I think it was, because at this point the booster was fully detanked, so it's not like they were having issues detanking. It could be that they wanted to just get rid of everything that was left in the tank faster so that they can move on to destacking quicker instead of waiting for the rest of this to boil off from the bottom of the tank. But I think there's also a good chance that this was intentional, almost to serve as somewhat of an in-flight test, so similar to the way that on the ship static fires they do the 6-engine test and then the single-engine test simulating the in-flight burn. I think this may be something similar to that, where they're just including the lock stump into their testing profile for static fires. So we'll probably know whether or not this is incorporated permanently the next time around. That would be Booster 16. But either way, hopefully that explains what's going on here, because like I said, I'm sure some of y'all were going to ask about it. So, anything to add on Booster 15?
No, I don't think so. It was a really good test. I mean, like you said, I mean, it was a really good angle that NSF had this morning. Just the way the winds were blowing to the north, and just couldn't have had a better opportunity to see inside and see the staggered ignitions.
Yeah, I agree with that. On that note, actually, I did think it was interesting because I wasn't able to see the third engine group during this, so you can easily see the first one and the second one right there. And normally you're actually able to see the third one pretty well. It is a little bit more difficult to make out because it's only 5 engines in the last group, but I was only able to see 2 here.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know, something about the conditions or something must have just made that last smaller group not quite as evident.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if it turns out that they actually switch this up to only use two engine groups, but I'm sure we'll find that out during the next launch attempt.
Yeah, and even
Cool.
they even may throw us in a top-down drone shot or something. Sometimes that is a little bit more prevalent because you can see all the different angles of the flames coming out of underneath.
Agreed. Yeah, I got my notifications on for SpaceX, so if they happen to drop a video during the live stream, we'll go ahead and show that, and maybe we'll actually be able to see that third engine group at that point. So, cool. With that, I guess we'll hop into today's show. I'm going to go ahead and start us off at the Massey's test site, our typical starting location. And BJ, I'll go ahead and let you lead us off.
Yeah, I mean, up here, since we're going to start up here at the static fire stand, we've already seen, if you were paying attention to some of the ground cams, we can see SPMT's ready to move the static fire stand back. So that's all no longer there, ready for Ship 34 to come back out here for static fire. But yeah, a few interesting developments up there at the Deluge Tank Farm, I think, is where we were kind of pointing towards the start. But there's some new high-pressure tanks also. I think are the newest thing. Obviously, that larger tank was new last week, which we couldn't cover. But those were actually removed out of the Deluge Tank Farm at Pad A. We're still not quite sure what they're for. As they've been brought here, we don't think they're part of the Deluge Farm. My speculation last night in show and tell was perhaps maybe it has something to do with a fire suppression system for static fires of ships, maybe. Given the issues that they had on Ship 33, I think general consensus is that there's not going to be a whole lot of fire protection in flight, especially at the altitudes of where we lost Ship 33. But perhaps that leak and whatnot, if it was to happen on the static fire stand, might be a little bit more problematic and preventable.
Right. So I guess just to expand on that, so the engine bay fire from Ship 33, Elon in particular said that they were going to be increasing the fire protection system inside of the ship. So that was something that I had been wondering about for a very long time because, I did an episode explaining that fire suppression system for the booster. And one of the things that I mentioned in that episode was that we thought there might be an equivalent system for the ship, but we did not ever see any proof of it. Kind of been looking for it on pretty much every launch to actually be able to see, similar to when the engine's cut off on the booster, you can see the fire suppression system. Matter of fact, I'll just go back to that video really quick. You can see the fire suppression system on the side of the booster right here. So as soon as the engine's cut off is when it really kicks in. I think it's actually active while the engines are firing as well too, but you notice it a lot more after the engine's shut down because it's no longer getting sucked down into the exhaust plume. So during every single one of the booster tests, you're able to easily see this, but we've never actually seen it on a ship. So as far as I could tell, they never had one, which I always found interesting, having something like that on the booster but not the ship, even though you're using the same engines. So with that said, we do know that they're adding additional fire suppression onto Ship 34. So I think what BJ's getting at here is that these may be possibly CO2 storage tanks.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what comes to mind. None of the other things that would potentially be needed over here made sense. I initially was thinking, oh, maybe it's something to do with the bigger tank for deluge, but Alex reminded me that that's not really how that system starts. So I guess we'll have to see and wait to find out where they plumb this into and whatnot. It looks like it's just some initial preparation here. I don't know that that's actually the final resting place for them.
Right. Yeah, I guess you would expect that they would need that system active by the time they do static fire tests for ship 34.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, exactly. I think anything that they're going to want to kind of show some movement forward on those problems that may come out in the mishap report before they get the license for our next flight.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I'm looking forward to seeing that mishap report. I'm surprised that, well, I guess I'm not surprised it hasn't come out yet. It's only been, like a month and a half?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, less than that, actually.
Definitely.
Just about a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, moving on. I'm sure this was probably covered in the last flyover or the last episode, but there is this newer liquid nitrogen tank over here to expand the capacity for the tank farm. So this is basically what they use to expand out into gaseous form and use the expansion ratio of that liquid nitrogen to force the water out of the tanks. So these are heat exchangers that vaporize the liquid nitrogen, and then that is pumped into the top of these tanks, which force the water out. So this is basically increasing the size of that storage. I don't think it necessarily means that they will increase the duration of the static fire tests, but it may just be more of having more on site so that they can do multiple tests without needing to refill this tank in particular. Let's see, moving on a little bit. What else do we have over here? So there is some construction of some new equipment going on still, and I personally have not had the time to be able to pay as close of attention to it. But BJ, do you know about this platform right here? Like, have you guys kind of been able to dial in? I'm sorry, I'm looking for a better angle of it as well.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, this one is still a bit of a mystery. Personally, I'm not entirely convinced of some of the speculation on it. I kind of can see a few things, but it kind of the general idea. The size is roughly about the right to fit within the test structure inside of the new clamp arms. Some speculation goes back and forth between whether it's in some form of an adapter ring to allow not necessarily ship testing, but testing of test articles that have a ship aft. They could then work with the booster clamps that have been installed in this rig. I'm kind of leaning personally. I think it's maybe more like an alignment, clamp alignment jig, kind of like what the spider web is that they use out at the launch mount. That's a little bit more purpose built, even though it's bigger, heavier, all that stuff. But you could just set it in there and get all 33 mounts, even depending on how the rams and stuff for the centers. That's just what kind of I lead towards. But I know there's a few different things, and until we see it go in here or be used on something else, it's very much a question mark. The construction does kind of seem to suggest that there's room to support the 33 Raptor mounts, so the adapter ring makes some sense. I'm just not convinced yet.
yeah, I wonder if it's something just as simple as a cap. So it's not actually related to testing, but because it seems like it may, and I don't know, it may actually fit perfectly inside of here. So I'm wondering if it has nothing to do with actually testing anything, but just to put a cap over all of this while it's not in use. It does seem like it would perfectly fit in here.
Yeah, it just seems the construction is just much more robust than what it would be, I think, for that. I mean, the inside structures we saw while they were building it that in the Ring of 10, there are some half circle kind of like spines inside that go between the top and bottom plates.
Hmm.
And then you got that center actually that seems to be the diameter of the center 3 engines. And then on the outside, that outside vertical member that's between the top and bottom plates is actually inset where we think that it would be center line of the actual engine mounts, where the clamp structure would be that outside lip. So all of those kind of combined start to kind of give some legitimacy to that possibility of it being related to some form of testing in there with the 33 Raptor mounts on a booster.
Right. Yeah, and I'm looking right here. This looks like there may be mounts for um,
Yeah, and
something
those
that
are
interface with the center, the Ring of 10.
well, and it's interesting because those are new this week. It's actually centered on the seams that we saw the internal structures for the Ring of 10. So that's actually halfway between that extra structure. So that's actually an interesting thing. I think I missed that actually, that those were in the middle of each of those wedges.
Yeah, it's tough to tell whether or not this is the position of those engines. It seems like
I
it's a little too far out.
I think it
Yeah,
is a bit
I
too
agree.
far out, Zach.
Okay.
And to BJ, to your point of perhaps being calibration alignment jig, depending for those 10 for the center, since they would have to be down, have a slightly different position, the inner rams.
Yeah. But yeah, so
Um,
it's definitely an interesting piece. I mean, it's a lot of steel in there. I mean, it's 2 layers, fairly thick. I mean, it's we'll have to wait and see, I think.
do you think it has any relation to this other um, structure over
And
here?
I think it would only relate to that in the sense that it would be similarly related to all the other test structure pieces, because I'm still thinking that is the mount for the center 10, the middle 10 ring of Raptor mounts within the test rig. And curiously, the other smaller ring for the 3 has gone missing this week, and we haven't been able to find it. Maybe perhaps it went into the building for to be further fabricated indoors instead of outdoors.
Are you talking about this one?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it was outside the tent that no longer has a tent cover. Was where it was being worked on the last few weeks. So, and we haven't found it anywhere here, right where that
Does this
yellow telehandler was.
building even have a garage large enough to move stuff like that through here?
Yeah, there's a big garage door on the far side that we can't see from any of our camera angles.
Okay.
But we suspect that we'll get there here in a second. But we suspect that perhaps the Test Tank 16 rig that has been added to it was possibly built in here, since we
In
didn't
here.
see it in any of the other sites. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess on that note, we can go ahead and move over to Test Tank 16.
Yeah.
I think I wish I had some. Starship Gazer had a really awesome ground shot of this. I'm not sure if he posted that on X or not. If he did, then I'll try and find that here in a moment. But yeah, this is. Oops, sorry about that. This is Test Tank 16, which rolled out of this week, and this is basically a ship testing structure. So we've already seen similar tests performed on Booster 14.1 test tank, but for there they actually used the real chopsticks for that test. Hold on, I have a great image of this right now, so I'll go ahead and pull that up. Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, this is what it looks like from the ground, and this is actually a great view because it kind of helps us see a few more details on it. So you can see that this is basically suspended from the top with these 2 beams, and then on each side there is not the full landing rail, not a landing rail simulator, but the pads on the catch arms that are on the side. So do we have a name for those?
Landing rail bumpers, catch bumpers.
Yeah.
I don't-
Okay. Yeah. So it
something
has the
like that.
bumpers on the side, and then in the middle of this, and I believe there's probably one on the other side as well too, is a hydraulic actuator, which more than likely will be pulling inwards to actually compress this thing, and kind of squeeze the tank. So this is basically simulating the chopsticks squeezing the ship. And I made a post about this on X, and maybe you agree or disagree, BJ. But it's interesting that they do this with this test article specifically, because you would think doing it with the booster, the test tank 14.1 would have been enough, because it's kind of the same. However, I think there's a chance that the ship may actually be landing with less internal tank pressure than what is seen on the booster, and that just comes from some quotes from Elon. I think during the second Everyday Astronaut tour of Starbase, Elon gave a pretty long speech about this topic. It's been a while since I've actually gone back and reviewed what he said there, but maybe you have some additional thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the location of where they're testing is a bit curious, because in this image, the right-hand side ramp appears to only be a ramp similar to the ramp that goes over the dome stringers on the ship. The other one we saw while it was in the factory that actually has a stabilizer socket in it. However, the stabilizer socket's not actually at a common dome stringer on the vehicle, at least for now. Since so
I may actually have a video of that. I'll go ahead and look for
yeah,
it while you're talking.
so it's interesting that and I've heard some people think that this is something about like lifted that passing over the stringer ramps, which obviously the way that they're hanging it, they're not testing anything vertical movement. I think it's just strictly squeezing on it. I don't know. My speculation is that I don't think the geometry of the chopsticks. I wonder if the chopsticks couldn't actually close with the force that they want to test, whether it can't test to the nominal pressure they want, or if they're going to try and do it to a test of destruction, where like the chopstick bump stops can't go far enough, that the way that those actuators work. I mean, they're big, so I would think that they could put the force there, but the geometry is much different. Here, they're just they're squeezing that on the end, where I think maybe they can put a little bit more force into that. But I think it also might have something to do with the fact that they're doing it on that dome, and whether there's any kind of structural weakness of the dome coming free from the barrel if it squeezes too hard in a catch attempt, and that would be really bad.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I do have a video. Oops. Okay. Usually that pops up full screen there, but this is from Lab Padre when this test tank was actually rolled out. So you can see what's underneath that stringer. This will clear up here in a second, I hope. Sorry, I was hoping this will have a. There we go. That's probably about as good as it's going to get right there.
Yeah,
So this is basically equivalent to the lower lifting point on the ship, right?
Yeah, that's the socket for the stabilizer arms. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, you're kind of assuming that the chopsticks are going to be closed on the ship by the time it passes this point, or before it passes this point. So I guess this ramp right here would be to make sure that these stringers aren't damaging the bumpers on the chopsticks, and kind of vice versa, that these don't get damaged by the bumpers as well too. So you want it to kind of bow outwards a little bit as it's passing this point. But yeah, that is a bit curious why they would be testing specifically on this. I guess one thing you could get is values for where it's actually going to be crushed at, so like what is the max force you can place on these before it actually crushes it, and may not necessarily be the tank structure itself, but the actual aero cover, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was one of the really cool things that we were able to see this particular time because when Ship 33 just appeared with all of these new ramps, we didn't really know what was underneath them because we got some views from Rover 1 while they were installing it. We could see that there's actually tapered spacers similar to what the booster ones are up by the catch points that are actually applied underneath this. So the aero cover is actually, the sheet is over the top of a separate stringer system, which was really nice to kind of get an idea what that was built on.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, because there was some confusion, I guess, when during Flight 7, this is basically the same thing as what came loose on Ship 33, what was flapping around. Actually, I believe it was the upper catch point.
It was the stabilizer. It's the one it's
Okay.
what we're pretty much looking at right now. One of the things that I think we noticed, and I can't say for 100% sure. The thing we saw on here is that this ramp appears to be one piece all the way from the top to the bottom now, with bends at where it flattens off.
Right.
The reason that we saw that fold back on 33 was the fact that this was like 9 separate pieces, or something like that, 8 or 9 pieces on Ship 33 so that's why we saw that flap kind of coming loose. Whereas I think now with having an actual bend in that aero cover, that won't happen on the next time, assuming they put this
Yeah.
on 34.
I thought that was really weird that it was made out of so many smaller pieces because, and they have like a whole machine shop so they can do all of this stuff in house. So it's like, why not just take one large panel and bend it where you need to make this? But I think it had a little bit, a few more contours on it than this one does, right?
Yeah, this one seems to not quite contour to there was definitely some complex cutouts to make it form to the different angle because of the slope angling and then meeting a curved structure.
Right.
This definitely doesn't look like a 100% accurate flight item.
Yeah, and it seems like there's some supports on the side right here to kind of. I don't see it on the other side actually.
Yeah, I can't tell if that's actually just a portion of the stringer before they would add one more piece that kind of folds back to the barrel on both sides. It might be half, essentially an exposed half of one of those stringers that's under the rest of it.
Right. Yeah, it'd be cool to do a comparison later just to see if the welds are the same, because that was one thing that we were kind of expecting they may do differently next time around was have more substantial welds. But one thing that I did see, I think it was in response to something that I posted about it, but one of the super heavy build supervisors commented on this and kind of mentioned that one of the difficulties with this is that this is such thin gauge steel, and you're welding that onto a parent surface that is much thicker, so it's harder to join those two surfaces together when there's such a large difference in the gauge of steel that's being used on each side. So yeah, I guess the point was that in those situations, it's a little bit more likely for the welds to actually fail. Cool. So I guess we'll go ahead and move on a little bit. Back to this, but I'm wondering if we'll actually see this tested at different heights with the chain falls on here. I don't know if that's just to purely for leveling it out, or if they plan to move it up the structure and kind of repeat the test at different heights.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's anything suggesting on there. The curious part is that those test additions aren't even in the proper orientation on the barrel. I mean, they're kind of randomly there. They're not centered off of the QD, and I think it's just gonna be here. And I think the chain falls were just simply there to easily level it off at the height it needed to be.
Yeah, that is a bit odd that this isn't centered on because the QD is down here.
Yeah.
Maybe they just didn't want it getting close, or they didn't want to have to worry about the flap mounting points.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very odd, actually. Yeah, I mean this test structure is kind of been used for multiple things at this point. So I guess they kind of just add things on in different positions in order to accomplish different tests. But this isn't necessarily in the position that it will be on a real ship. Cool. Yeah. So let's move on. I guess. I guess it would be nice if we could actually see this test occurring, but given that, that Massey's is pretty much 24/7 operation, without having somebody out there on site, we probably won't be able to see it. But luckily, we should be able to probably get something from the aftermath once they remove this test structure. I'm sure there'll be, or maybe be, some visible signs. There typically is. Usually, we can kind of tell whether tests have been successful or failed. So, yeah, we'll have to keep our eyes out on that. What else do we have at Massey's?
Yeah, let's go up ahead and just kind of quickly pass a few things. Next to the methane farm, the foundations are there for that new horizontal tank, potentially for methane. Just to the left there, we've got the two sets, the embeds. We saw the early work of that a couple flyovers ago, so it's not new necessarily to the weekly, but it's finished now, ready for a tank, it seems. Farther to the left, booster 12's
really
hot.
quickly, you think they might get rid of these vertical tanks and put horizontal ones, or at least one?
I think it might be an expansion, not necessarily a replacement. We haven't really seen any plumbing yet to really tie into what that tank's going to be for. We haven't seen any tanks that seem to match that size, though we've seen plenty of tanks arriving recently, but this one seems to not be here yet. I don't know why they would need more. I mean, the expansion of the water deluge capacity of the liquid nitrogen, maybe it is just about being able to store more commodity on site so they don't have to for turnaround times or more testing and whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you were saying over here to the left.
Yeah, our hot state drink pieces are finally gone after sitting for a long time. Surprised that those pieces hadn't gone away a month ago. So just something quick to mention and kind of go by.
Yeah, this is like their second scrapyard.
Yeah, finally, it does appear that all of the flight hardware that was scrapped there has finally been gone away. So yeah, that's a lot of big things. I mean, there's some structures down at the right at the entrance that are kind of curious. I think a few of us might even think that this is just a build location for things that may actually be for maybe Pad B work platform, maybe Pad B tank farm platforms. I'm not sure. Maybe they're even for Massey's, but they've been being built over the last few weeks as well.
Yeah, I would have to imagine this is whatever this is probably for Massey's, given that they do have some additional space now at Sanchez, given that they have finally moved out the chopsticks and installed those. I guess we may go ahead and just switch over to Sanchez here in a few minutes. But really quickly, we'll address any questions or donations that we have, and then we'll pick this topic up when we go back to Sanchez.
All right, sounds good. I want to thank Callistia Lee for gifting 5 memberships. Yap Kuipers gifting 1. Miss Jack's gifting a membership. Jim Cavett gifting a membership. Thank you all for all of that support. Phil with a £2 super chat says, "Can't wait for this. Love you, RGV and all." Big Boy became a member. Thank you for that. Joni Mahoney, $5 super chat. Great picks and live stream. Thanks for all you guys do. And our very own Nate Z, $20 super chat. Keep up the good work, RGV team. I did have a number of folks in the chat asking the question, what is the sphere next to the test stand for?
Which test stand? Are we talking about
The new structure
down by the test rig? Alex might be the best one to chime in quick on that one.
Yeah, that they were using that as a high pressure nitrogen tank. It came from the middle of the LOX and nitrogen tanks.
are you talking about the ones that it's basically the same as this one, right?
Yeah, it was adjacent to that, right to the left. There's a gap where it was.
Okay. Yeah, so this would maybe be to not necessarily for the actual tank itself, but maybe tanks within the tank, like header tanks, or sorry, not header tanks, but COPVs inside of it or something.
Yeah, quite possibly. There's probably something going in that gap, but it's an odd move. It could just be a giant accumulator as well.
Right, that makes sense.
All right, I want to thank
hydraulic
Jim
reservoir,
Cabot.
yeah.
Excellent. I want to thank Jim Cabot for one more gifted membership, and I'd say we are good to proceed.
Cool. All right, with that, I guess I'll move us over to the Sanchez site. I do want to touch on the storage yard that's in between Massey's and Sanchez, but I think I'll wait until we get to the launch site for that. It seems a little bit more relevant when we get there. Cool. So we are now at the Sanchez site where the launch mount for Pad B and the flame bucket are currently being constructed, among other things. So I know this is a big center point for a lot of folks. A lot of excitement towards the new launch pad right now, and we can see that they are making great progress on it. The beams that were on top of the structure, which were basically used to kind of help level it off while it was being lifted, and also as essentially attachment points for the crane, have all been removed. They've appear to have finished the welds that join each of these together. I don't see any more gaps up here, and oh yeah, they actually put in, it looks like a strip between each of those panels, so that it's like they're not welding the panels together, they're welding each of the panels to that strip, essentially.
Yeah, identically to how they did the plate underneath the Pad A. But yeah, we saw the tent work was up there about 2 weeks ago. I think last week even we saw that they were removed, and kind of this is the state of what the top looked like last week. It does look like some more work is being done there up towards the top. We were speculating last night perhaps they're working on the actual exit holes for the actual function of the water plate.
Yeah, I was wondering, because when they delivered these, we did see a few videos while they were on the truck, and from that angle, it wasn't necessarily looking up correctly the way that you would need to see in order to view those holes, but you would think that at least some of them would have been visible in that video, and we weren't really able to see them. So I wonder if these are actually being drilled on site versus coming manufactured that way, like they did for the Pad A deluge system.
Yeah, I think I think some of the thoughts and conversation was that perhaps that the holes were drilled when they were manufactured, and maybe those holes were filled with some form of resin or some kind of filler for the manufacturing and transport, and then now, which would make it so that they could drill them out easier as opposed to actually having to drill through the steel. They're just drilling some much easier material to pull out that temporary material.
Yeah, I was also thinking about the fact that with all that grinding and welding that was going on up top of here, they may be just cleaning out those holes, right? Like you can see kind of the residue from all of that work that was going on up here. So I imagine a lot of that material ended up inside of those holes if they were present.
Yeah, I think the high from the altitude we take pictures. It's just one of those things where I don't know that there's any resolution that we would actually get to see those holes really well. I mean, we kind of start seeing that in the launch mount one, mostly because of the patterns from after launch. We can kind of see that pattern, but it's not really the holes we're seeing. It's a heat pattern.
Right, imprints from the exhaust plumes, individual plumes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, another thing they have going on up here, they have welded on manifolds, or basically pipes to attach to a manifold on the side of the table. I have heard differing thoughts on whether or not that's going to go all the way around or if the supply is purely going to come from one side. But they have not welded like capping plates as far as I've been able to tell. I think you can actually see through the side of it right here. They haven't welded any kind of caps on the other three sides yet. So I think that for some reason they made. I was surprised that we didn't see any other pipe sections arrive with these ones, which I guess in itself is kind of an indication that they're only going to be supplying from one side. But given that they haven't put those caps on here or designed them that way with the caps already, I'm kind of thinking that we may end up seeing additional manifolds on the sides, on all four sides.
Yeah, I mean, I ever since we started seeing these pieces come in, and we've only seen the two for the plate and then the large tube manifold. Since that arrived and haven't seen any more. I'm on the one side only. Yeah, the two adjacent sides are still clear. The side opposite of the manifold actually does have some plates in it that have large holes all the way across it. We saw those plates on the ground in last week's flyover images. I think the speculation right now is that maybe those are a clean out hole or something like that. Similar to, we saw that in again, going back to the Pad A plate, there were areas that had caps
on the side. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a plate with threaded holes that they could put caps in, probably for clean out purposes.
Up by the blue shipping container, if you head up on this image, Zach, there's on the ground, there's those
Yeah,
plates.
Yep, that's what some of those ones. The bottom one more than the top one. I didn't realize there's still some left over.
Yeah, the oval holes is the only thing that gives me pause for clean outs.
I don't know if I
Yeah,
have
I think in some of the ground images they looked a little bit more round as opposed to some of the aerials where they look a little oblong from some of the angles. So I think it's hard to tell what they're for.
Yeah. Unless they're putting a diagonal pipe on it.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I wonder because I guess if they were circular, you could not only put caps on them, but they could also attach those pipes on site, right? Instead of having them delivered that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if they were going to build more on-site instead of having them built off-site, the interesting part is the ones that are attached already have alternating pipe sizes on it, and it seems like what's over there, the one that's fully drilled out, seems to be uniform all the way across. I know that one other one has a number of different pipe size. They have different hole sizes, and it's some different. It's not even consistent across the way. So it'll be interesting to see what they've got in the works here. I really wish we could see down in the middle right now, because in the last couple of weeks we've seen a number of pieces of hardware staged off to the side, which I'm almost positive have been installed somewhere down inside, whether it's underneath the main structure along the inner perimeter or if it's actually inside next to the clamp arms. We don't know. I think everybody wants to see inside there and see what's going on.
Yeah, it's basically like a apartment building in there as far as how large it is. You got two levels of scaffolding down here, so it's difficult to kind of see what's going on down there. I saw the question in the chat, which I've kind of been expecting. This is from Felix11, and sorry, Astro Joe, to kind of steal this one from you, but
not a problem.
So Zach, hopefully you haven't answered this already, but do you still think this OLM is portable? I do. I mean, it is 100% portable as far as having to move it to the site. The question is whether or not it's permanently attached to the base or not. And at this point, it can go either way, and it's like just one small detail that separates it from being interchangeable is whether or not they permanently attach it to the base. So one way or another, they're going to outfit this completely. It will move more than likely with clamps installed. So that'll probably be a few steps down the road where they actually install the hold down arms. And I mean, if they are only supplying this from one side, that kind of makes things even easier. That was a big question that a lot of people had. Well, if they have the water system on top of the deck, how could it possibly be interchangeable? I think it's pretty simple. If you have on the ground side a ideally you would probably run this into one large manifold that's on the side of the table or hangs just below this. But even if not, you can simply attach like clamps onto the flanges on the ends of each of these pipes. I don't know if they have flanges on them. Do they?
No,
but
there's
They don't.
there's a manifold that has 2 openings on either side, and
Is that already here?
yeah, it's over where the chopsticks were, I believe.
Yeah, it's still up there.
Hold on. I'm not down far enough.
Just above the white pickup truck and SUV by that big pipe rack. You got the trailer and to the left.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so
It arrived about 2 weeks ago, but they haven't seemed to have touched it since it arrived. Although the right side looks like maybe some work's been done on that side.
yeah, so I mean,
Right.
having something like this be able to be just detached or not, this will probably be permanently attached to the side of the launch mount, but on the ends is pretty much all you're really worried about. So if you have flanges on either end, connecting and disconnecting this to the permanent ground lines is not really that difficult to do. So like I said, it really comes down to the fact that currently this is bolted down onto the pedestals. So they're either going to use those same bolt holes that already exist in the structure, or they're going to weld it down. So, I mean, that is basically the only thing separating it from being interchangeable versus fixed. And on that note,
Yeah, and to add to that, Zach, was something that I've noticed and think is that on the corners at the top there's 2 really large mounts to the frame. They use them for lifting those corner pieces in place, but I think they're oversized for just the construction lifting. I think that along with bolting from the bottom, I think those 8 points around the corner are also going to be used as some form of tie down to the actual structure of the flame trench as well. Personal opinion.
that would make sense, actually. Kind of similar to if we look at these over here, similar to the way these are attached. Actually, this would be different for more like the old booster transport stands. They had struts that attached down to the ground to kind of keep it from tipping over.
Sort of like
Those aren't the new
buttresses.
ones? Sorry, go ahead.
Sort of like buttresses
Yeah,
coming down. And the other things that leads to all the looks like permanent openings are on the side with that manifold as well.
yeah. So we can, I mean, at this point, almost confirm that this is the side that's going to go. Um, what would that be? South side of the trench?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would actually say I think it goes the other way personally because I think the water system's all coming from the north side of the trench, but I think that's confirmation bias based on on where I think the water is going to come from.
Yeah. Hopefully,
But
hopefully. So I guess this is a follow-up question that's going with that. If it's portable, do you think the SPMTs they have on hand can handle this? Yeah. I mean, I don't think this is. I mean, it's probably really heavy. I do had some estimates for it that I was using for the episode that I have coming out about this. But let me actually just go refer to that really quick because it is worth mentioning these masses. So, like for example, with the booster, you have 16. When they transport boosters, they have I think it's 16 counterweights on it, or is it 32?
16, it's 80 tons on the front, 80 tons on the back.
Right. So you have that plus a 270 ton booster, and the transport stand. I was actually hoping that I was going to get a weight of that, but we did have an estimation that I was using for that as well too. Which the script is kind of long, so it's not exactly easy for me to just quickly find this, but the total was well over 500 tons. I think it was approaching, I want to say 600 at least, for just transporting a normal booster on the transport stand. So with that said, the first launch mount, as far as we knew, was somewhere around 400 tons. I could be wrong about that. That's just the number that comes to my mind, was 400 tons. So, I think as long as this is below 1,000 tons, it should probably be fine. It's difficult to get an estimation on this. The way we were doing it, for the transport stands was to basically take the volume of steel and then like apply a material to that and kind of get an estimate. But we have not done that yet for this, and I think part of that is due to the fact that it's just simply not done yet. But yeah, in order to put that on the road, all you really need is just more axles. And yeah, sorry, I just found this in the script. In total, the regular booster transport stands with the booster on top and counterweights is just under 200 tons. And the transport stand itself is 200 tons. So that would be this transport stand right here was estimated at 200 tons. So you have that plus 270 ton booster plus the counterweights, pretty heavy. So yeah, I mean, we haven't seen any like permanent damage to the highway after transporting boosters back and forth. Before they repaired Highway 4, you could actually see grooves in the highway where you could tell the SPMTs had driven through multiple times. Haven't seen anything like that. They did reconstruct that highway with all of this stuff in mind, so I really don't think it's a huge deal. And again, you have to move it at least once, so that means that there's a plan for it. And if it's too heavy to do it with 2 rows of SPMTs, you can just put a 3rd row in the middle. But I don't think that would be necessary. We haven't really seen them do that for anything else yet.
I mean, 2 rows of 24 would move it quite easily, I believe.
Yeah. Cool. I think I didn't see any other questions on that come through. But moving on, we do have a ton of other stuff down here. I don't know if any of y'all wanted to mention. Basically, just tons of parts down here, which I'm not sure if we know what those are related to. The 3rd booster transport stand looking nice, but still no progress on that. They do have the arms for the clamps right here, but they have not installed those yet, which I find a bit curious.
Well, those arms are the ones that were removed from the second stand when they replaced them with the stainless arms. So I think those will go to scrap at some point. I think we expect that even the first one will probably get new clamp arms at some point with the newer stainless ones.
Okay, so that might be part of the issue then, is that they're waiting for the new arms to come through.
Yeah, I think that might be similar to the case. It does look like I'm not sure if we saw it last week or not, but it looks like they've actually stenciled all the clamp numbers on the top of that ring relatively recently.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was the numbers or
little bit
not.
of small progress, I guess. I see our Z and Y, our Z and X, I think, are the 2 that are labeled on there as well.
Oh, like up here?
Yeah, up those are with at least a week or 2 old. They weren't there a couple weeks ago because we had actually saw the progress of them actually painting the top of it finally.
Okay. And we also have some additional structures being fabricated down here. This has been here for a few weeks, right? Or is this another new one? Because they've built several of them at this point.
Yeah, the one to the left was finished recently. The one out to the right is newly started to be constructed. But yeah, they're of the same manufacturing that we've seen quite a few built recently.
Yeah, so these are additional workstations for the Star Factory. Almost all of them, as far as we can tell, have been constructed out here. They probably are working on some inside of the building as well too. I've said this multiple times, find it curious that they're making them out here instead of inside the factory, but I think it may be as simple as wanting to keep the floor nice in the factory instead of having all of this like, what's the right word for this? Yeah,
Slag.
exactly. Yeah, I think they kind of just want to keep the factory floor clean. But I mean, they're welding all the time in there anyways, right? With the tank sections. So I don't know.
The robots could have some sort of air vacuumed as well.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, it's the other pieces. It's the other pieces in that image that are the very curious new items. That
These ones.
yeah, there's that pair. There's another pair by the transport stand as well. Yeah, they're interesting. There was a point where we saw they were always both there. I just didn't see the one by the booster transport stand. There was some similarities to the bolt hole patterns on that big old flange that maybe I had thought it was part of the Pez dispenser, but our discussions last night, I think we think it's just a new and different fixture for the factory, and that those 4 elements will turn into a ring that's got some mounts off of 2 sides.
Yeah, it almost looks like a like something you'd put a platform on in between, like a walking platform almost. But is this one structure or is it just
No. The best we could tell is that it's separate pieces. It's essentially they're 4 90-degree segments of a circle that appears to be 9 meters in diameter. Perhaps the 2 that don't have those flanges would go between the ones with flanges to make that full circle. There's
with
some
this
curious.
right here?
No, not even with that. That might even be something totally
I mean,
separate.
that looks like this almost looks the same as these ones.
Yeah, except for those ones are 90. The one on the left is a 90-degree segment. These other ones are 60-degree segments. The other 4 pieces for that are 3 right there and 1 to the right by the stand by those
right here.
white racks. Yeah, 3 there, and 1, and the 4th one is over to the far right of the image.
Okay.
But yeah, but that again, that's another weird thing that what looks like a very old and rusted 6-point star load spreader is being modified into something new.
Yeah, that is a bit curious. I can't really imagine what that would be used for.
But yeah, so there's something weird. It's interesting. There's some mounting points that almost looks like it might sit that other ring going back. It might sit flat and be attached to the floor because next to you've got the big flanges that are vertical, but there's some small like bolt flanges down on the bottom resting against the ground right now, back by the flange itself. Yeah, right there. A couple other angles make it real clear that that's kind of a forked spot where you could bolt that to the ground or potentially. I think some of the speculation is maybe that a welding robot could be mounted to the side of this for some kind of station. There's obviously a hatch there as well. So lots of interesting elements to this, but very little clarity on what they're for.
Yeah, I in the past was kind of holding out hope that we would get to see most of this stuff when Everyday Astronaut did his tour of the Star Factory, but they seem to not want to show most of the testing stations that were in there. I think it's probably had something to do with the fact that most of those stations were empty at that point. But with just how large the factory is, I mean, you could do a 2-hour tour of that alone and not see anything else on site. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe in the future we'll get some more views of in the factory, so a lot of this stuff will start to make sense. But yeah, I mean, tons of workstations going into that building, and I think we have several more months of this until they're actually like considered fully operational. Let's see. Moving on a little bit, there was some other interesting items nearby this.
Actually, before you move, actually, since it was front and center in that image, we saw it should be the first ridge cap cover for the flame bucket ridge. It's to the right there, farther to the right of the pipe stands. Next to the more.
I know I saw it from above. Oh, right here.
Yep, right there. But yeah,
taco.
So one of the 2, yeah, yeah. So that'll go. That is the shape is right to go on those right there to finish off the ridge cap of the flame bucket.
Yeah, so that goes up here, or actually underneath it, right?
It might go if those were actually sitting in the right orientation. It would go there, but those are actually those are actually sitting on their slope,
Right.
Orientation. So, but if you were to pretend that those are the way they're going to go in the trench, yeah, it would probably go over the top of that ridge. Yeah.
Actually, on this side.
Yep. And then the other side kind of they just kind of rotate. They flip spots and rotate.
Right.
But we've only seen one of those one of the now covers in there. The we know that there should be a second one coming since there's two of the frames that we've termed the bike racks.
And speaking of the flame bucket, I guess we'll go ahead and move over there next. As I look for a good image of that. I'm sure there's got to be a better one, so I'll keep on looking. But yeah, this flame bucket is making some very nice progress. They've gotten a lot of the pipes installed. Actually, you know what? I think I still need an overhead view because that really helps out a lot with this.
Yeah, now that they've started working, particularly on that right side one, they've started working up the curve that comes on those angled manifold sections. These lower angles don't show it as well, but yeah, the very much nearly complete with the flat portions. We think that those 4 gaps are purposely there for some form of lifting or movement. We're not entirely sure, but we're pretty sure that they're purposely left out for now.
Yeah, and they're probably have they? Do you know if they've started welding these together yet?
Doesn't appear to be. Most of the ground shots we've seen, you can still see the gaps through it. I feel like we're going to eventually see all of those ends probably start to get a little bit more in line with each other once they do. I think right now it's evident that they're not welded because those ends, I think they'll be forced into position a little bit better because even the bottom side ones have become a little bit more level with each other as they've progressed.
Yeah, and so I mean but you would think that they're attaching these onto something. Like what's holding them in position if not welded onto the frame? At least tack welded.
Yeah. Well, right now they're only we can tell all we can really tell is that they're probably welded to the manifold. We did see some ground images where there's actually a piece of rubber that is sitting on the top of all those I-beam flanges between the I-beams and the tubes themselves. To keep dissimilar metals apart from each other. So there's probably a good chance that any connection, it's not going to be welded to its structure. It'll probably be clamped in some form or fashion so that some movement is allowed between the two metals.
Sort of like a pin and slot joint, probably.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, they definitely have a bit more work to go. You can see there's additional pipe sections down here all around, which are pretty much all destined for this. And they have not started on the sloped sides yet, or I guess the curved sides.
Yeah, 3 of the 4 aren't done. That one in the top left, they've actually, I think there's one tube. Is it one up the ramp is already there? The last flat one is actually mounted. It's actually fed from the angle. But yeah, it looks like they're getting ready. Since all the rest of them are pretty much in there, they're getting ready to start putting them up the side.
And the pieces are welding. The T's are angled, so for the side joints.
Yeah, I did find it curious that they built this on site versus having it sent in sections like they did with the Massey's one. But I guess it kind of makes sense considering that this is all one manifold instead of having 3 joined together. Yeah, it's very cool watching them actually construct this though.
Yeah, some of us, when they started leaving those ones out, we were even starting to think whether they were maybe going to slice this into 3 pieces to move. But I think the more we think about it, especially that other piece of steel that's just arrived, that's to the left of that bucket, there just doesn't seem to make any sense on why they can't just move it in one piece over to the launch site, given they don't have to put it on the highway. If they were going to do it in separate pieces, I think they would have built them at McGregor maybe, and then trucked them in like they did with the Massey's one. So it's definitely an interesting difference, but there's some weird things trying to figure out why they're doing a few different parts of this manufacturing.
The other thing is it can be lowered down It's more narrows in the between the legs on the OLM, while the Massey's one spanned the entire flame trench.
Yeah,
Do
that's
I
a
have a
great
good
point.
view that looks straight at him to kind of show that? I do not. This is probably about as close. Yeah, so you can tell that it fits within the width of the launch mount.
Yes.
Which is another good sign. It allows it with whatever, if they have a retractable platform on the side of it, moving that out the way, dropping these in there, and also in the event that these ever become damaged and need to be swapped out, gives you the ability to lift those back out once you move the launch mount out of the way. So yeah, that would be a very, very convenient feature to have.
Correct. It's looking like the ridge cap is going to set. It'll be welded down, but it'll be able to be easily removed
Right.
since they have flanges actually on its feed.
On the feet?
On the feed, the right there, where your cursor is,
Uh-huh.
is the main feed for the ridge.
This?
Yes,
Okay.
and there's a flange on one end, so
Yeah, allows you to just disconnect it and remove it if you need to. Yeah.
correct.
Like I said, I think all signs continue to point to exactly what I've been suggesting for, I don't know, the last 4 or 5 months now. So, still waiting to see something that makes it look like the entire thing is one permanent structure that is intended to never move. But I don't think I've seen anything that points in that direction at all yet. And I think once we get to the launch site, continue to see more signs that indicate that this is interchangeable structure. But is there anything else on the flame trench that we should touch on before I move us over to this pile of stuff over here?
No,
No, I think it covers it, and we can move on to that massive amount of steel.
Yeah, so down here we have some exciting stuff, which I was kind of sad we never saw with the Pad A launch tower. But this does appear to be cladding for the Pad B launch tower. So there's several different kinds of pieces in here. There's some that are flat on both sides. You can kind of see down here, these are, this is probably the best representation of what all of these are right here. So it's a plate with 4 mounting positions, essentially. Maybe I have a good tower ground shot that I could pull up later. But yeah, so these, matter of fact, that it does seem like a good idea to do. So let me just go ahead and pull up a ground image of that.
Yeah, and while you're looking that up, the interesting part about this is most of this was actually delivered directly to the launch site and then moved back here to Sanchez. I think one of the things I find interesting is that some of the tower cladding above the carriage arms on the Tower A structure have also been removed. So I'm not entirely sure that some of this may not actually find its way onto Tower A as well as onto Tower B.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm still just looking for a good image of this. I tried to initially go for one that I took, but I don't think I'm finding what I'm looking for. Actually, I have a pretty good one right here, so I'll go ahead and pull that up. Look at this. Trying to make sure so I don't have to open up a whole nother window. So this should work, hopefully. Cool. There, and then back. Cool. So yeah, this is a good image that kind of shows these on the Pad A tower. So you can see that they have these basically flat panels on all of the everywhere except for on the edges. And this is actually not a good one to show here. But the one down here, unfortunately,
Yeah,
I
you can see
don't
it.
have the full
You can see
panel
it.
visible. But you can see the way it has this curve down here for the corner, basically to seal in the edges. So I think we're seeing something similar with these pieces over here.
Yeah, and it's interesting. A lot of these ones actually, like for about a third of it, that angled back relief is only part of the length. So I'm not sure if it's because it's maybe the bottom layer worth of them, or if maybe even in some parts of the tower that these will be in the middle of the wall of the cladding as well, with perhaps an overlay to try and because we've seen in some of the ground images where you can actually see through those gaps into the tower itself. Perhaps some of these new ones, a flat one will sit over the top of them in the middle as well to try and prevent those exhaust gases from getting into the tower, like during a landing burn in particular.
Right. It's interesting. These seem to be, and sorry if you said this already while I was looking for that picture. These seem to be a different material than the ones that are on the Pad A tower. So these look like they're stainless, and I don't. And the other ones, I believe these ones right here are from tower Pad A.
Yeah, I'm
Or
not sure
they're
if those were actually on Tower A before. I have seen in the last couple of weeks they've been building some more non-stainless ones in Sanchez. So I'm not entirely sure if those are new ones that aren't the newer stainless ones. It'll be interesting to see if maybe the Tower A stays non-stainless and that these are additional ones that go back on there, and these are truly only for Pad B. But I could see that Pad A also might get some stainless ones, since we've seen quite a bit of scorching of those panels, especially on when Booster 14 came in. There was a lot of exhaust on the tower compared to Booster 12.
Yeah, I at this point I think everything should be stainless. It was always weird to me that there were so many different um, types of carbon steel used on the original on Pad A. Different types of steel all over the launch mount. The legs were different than the actual launch mount itself. Then there's the canopy on top of the launch mount, which was a different kind of steel than the panels, the ablative panels, both on the top and the shielding panels on the side. So yeah, it was really weird, the mismatch of all of those different materials. And it's not like you can't weld them together, because they obviously did. Dissimilar metals are. There's not really an issue with joining them together, but once they are together and you have situations where you have massive changes in in temperature over very short periods of time, the expansion ratio between those two materials is going to differ. So that can cause issues with those welds, as far as cracking welds, because one side is expanding faster than the other side. Yeah, so I always found it weird that it seemed like there was no consideration of that on Pad A, but I'm really glad to see that a lot more stainless on everything for Pad B. The only thing that's not stainless right now, I think, is the actual superstructure itself. But that's fine, because the entire deck is, and that's the part that's actually going to be exposed. So let's see. What else do we have down in this area?
I think down in this area we've covered most of this stuff. There's some new stuff up over where the chopsticks used to be, or the carrot. Yeah, the chopsticks used to be. Some actuator news, which ties into the launch site, obviously. But we saw some new actuators arrive this week. One of them is still here. One of them's already installed in the tower, and then the old ones have been moved over by the SQD arm, which hasn't had any activity the last couple of weeks. But you can see them just there behind the two that we've been seeing moved around for the last months. That one is brand new, and it matches the new one on tower already.
Are the two old ones down there?
They're just above the SQD arm.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So the left one there is the one they removed from the left chopstick of Tower A, and then the one on the right is the one that's got all the extra valve bodies, the upgraded valve body systems that we thought maybe would be the new chopsticks actuator, but it appears that they've got totally new ones for the second tower.
Yeah, I wonder what the length difference was for the actuators used on the chopsticks versus the SQD arm. Like if they can use that on this, or if it's a completely different size.
They look
'Cause they
very
will need
similar.
actuators for these. Sorry, go ahead.
They look very similar in size. I haven't tried to measure them out yet.
Yeah, there was that moment where I remember that I felt like almost that this one was maybe going to go on the SKD arm of Tower A as an upgrade, um, which maybe does kind of lend to perhaps all three are the same size, but hard to tell.
Yeah, I'll have to touch base with Ryan on that one because I know he has the actual sizes in his models. So, question will have to be answered another day. Moving on, let's see what else do we have down here. That might be a little bit too far for you, but was there anything else that you guys wanted to touch on at Sanchez? I know they've. Oh, so there was did lose a ship this week. Ship 32 was out here for a while, sitting in this location, and they did move ship 32 into the high bay for scrapping. I don't know if we've started to see sections come out yet.
No, it doesn't appear that they've started yet. I don't think anyone's noticed any movements in the high bay from like Sentinel Cam or anything. But yeah, definitely no segments have come out yet.
Yeah, so now in the Rocky Garden, all we have left is booster 12 and ship 24.
20.
20, sorry.
Yeah, the Rocky Garden is very empty right now, feeling compared to some of the recent times.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you could easily keep 32. You could have kept it here longer, and it's not like they're taking up storage spots really because they don't really have anything else to go there right now. So I don't know. I guess they're planning for a ramp up in manufacturing, so eventually you will actually start to need these storage locations again. But right now, the Rocket Garden has been pretty sad looking.
Unless they're prepping to get rid of high bay and cleaning up the loose ends.
Get rid of what?
High bay.
Yeah, good point. With the dismantling of high bay possibly coming soon, it would make sense that you're kind of going to lose your ability to scrap full vehicles, mostly because, I mean, you could still do it inside of the 2 megabays, but that ties up basically the entrance because with all the workstations around there, there's not really anywhere else you can do it other than in the middle. And that not necessarily a good thing when you're actually trying to build new vehicles. So, yeah, it makes sense that you would want to scrap everything that needs to be scrapped inside of the high bay as quickly as possible before you potentially start dismantling it. And on that note, well, I guess I'll wait a little bit to touch on that because I did want to discuss one more thing before we go over there, which I find interesting. So we do know that several months ago, or I think it was after Flight 6, where a few of these panels blew off of here. So it seems like they've continued to strip this, which is kind of sad. I wonder if do you guys think we'll just see it white along the wall, the whole wall?
I think they're gonna. Yeah, I think they're gonna coat it. I don't know that the white coating is gonna do much good. I think because that's just a gypsum board, even though it's fiberglass. I feel like they blew out just from that windstorm in the ability for the wind to get in behind the wall and just pop panels off.
Right.
Unless they're going to go back through and put something on that keeps it to the frames more securely. But the new areas that are more coated in white looks like they're going to go back and skim coat the entire thing and then maybe put a new graphic, which would be nice because some of the close-ups that we've seen, the surface that is underneath the mural was not very nice.
Yeah, that didn't last very long. Honestly, I think it would look, as cool as the mural was, it would look good just having a black and white structure like this. So yeah, it was cool while it lasted, I guess. Moving on to the ring yard, or the manufacturing area. Actually, let me just make sure really quick that we don't have questions for Massey's. I'm sure there's probably launch mount and or flame bucket related questions.
Yeah, definitely. Let me clear out my queue here. First, I want to thank Methane Man for $50 PayPal donation. Here is some cash towards fuel. And of course, I wanted to acknowledge Felix11 for those 2 super chats of the questions that you already answered for $25 there. Thank you so much for that, Felix. And then we've got a $10 super chat from Yazada. Thanks to Mauricio for all his work getting us these photos. And another $10 super chat from JK Video. And so thanks for all that support. I do have some questions on the flame bucket from Liam Donald. Will the pipes sticking out of the OLM be on all sides? Is one side water in and the other water out? Or does all the water come out the plate?
Yeah, I guess we did kind of touch on that, but I mean, as far as on the other sides, like we said, we may have some clean out sections. So when they run this for the first time, you're not going to want to push out any debris that's in here out of these holes because it may end up just clogging the holes. And also, it's a very good possibility that the holes aren't long enough for some debris to actually make it out of here. It's not like you can just stick a broom inside of this thing and sweep it out. So when they initially run it for the first time, you're probably going to want to have caps on all sides, which actually didn't think about when they were initially constructing this. But you could also do it on the inside edge as well. Actually, I think those are sealed off now. Or they
are.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So the only option you have is from the sides. So once you pump water through here, and they may do it in sections where they cap 2 of the sides and then blow out one side and then kind of repeat that for the other 2 sides, or potentially do it all at once. I don't know if you'd be able to necessarily reach all the way to the end if you have the caps off on these. You'd have to be pushing quite a lot of water through it in order to do that. But just leaving those caps off so you have the ability to actually clean it out is more than likely what's going on there. But during operation, all the water will come out of the top only.
All right, sounds good. Quick and easy one from 6-String Simpleton. Are there any renders in the works or possibly a CSI Starbase deep dive for this one?
Yeah, we have Chrome Kiwi and Lewis Nags have been posting pretty good amount of renders during the process of this construction. As far as episode, I will maybe be releasing one today. I haven't decided yet. I uploaded it a few days ago, or yesterday actually, and but also trying to record the second part of that episode right now too. So that's been my priority, is to get part 2 done. But I don't know. We may release it either before or after the Super Bowl. Haven't decided yet.
Cool. Looking forward to it. Question from 6-String Simpleton on the flame bucket. Why the gaps? Just waiting to be placed or intentional design?
Waiting to be put in. In this one it's just below, but just below there's an I beam that's being manufactured just at the bottom of your image there, Zach. It has 2 what look like maybe lifting strap structures on them that actually are spaced of that gap. We're not entirely sure if it's for lifting the bucket or aligning the 2 pipes for final welding, but it is purposeful. Not entirely sure what the purpose is though.
1, 2. Yeah, they are lined up there pretty perfectly.
Maybe possibly for a lifting jig?
Yeah, that's one of the 2 options. Lifting jig is one. One of my other thoughts is that perhaps that'll go in there and there'll be a second one on the top that we'll use to sandwich all the pipes into a perfectly flat plane for the final welding.
Gotcha.
But that might
Makes
not
good
be
sense. All right. Well, in the best interest of keeping time, I'll take one more question from Caspa X. Is there some reason that the other ends of the flame bucket pipes are not level with each other?
I think I touched on that a little bit earlier, and I think it has to do with the fact that the pipes have the manufacturing, they are not 100% bent identically. So I think the way they sit naturally, they're a little bit off. And then once they force them into a nice flat plane, they'll level them out.
Yeah, the BJ, they could use that bar to force them to the lower support structure. If they
So,
put
so
the
yeah,
bar.
basically what you're saying is that some of them are resting flat on all of these ribs, and others are a little bit kind of not bent properly, so they're not laying down flat on there, which is causing them to appear longer than the others.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
this
that's
one in
yeah.
particular looks longer than the other ones, and I guess you can almost see a gap underneath it, which kind of seems like it's not fully sitting on that rib.
Yeah, and some of the ground photos we've seen of guys who have been out in the mud flats off the side that look straight on it, you can kind of see a waviness to the surface, that the pipes aren't perfectly placed just yet. And I think it's going to require just a little bit of brute force to get them to where they are. And then, like I said, I think they'll all flush out once they're done with the manufacturing.
Right. Cool. Anything else, or shall we move on?
We shall move on. My cue is clear. Thank you.
Alrighty. So yeah, going back over to the production site area. Got a really cool view looking inside of Mega Bay 2 or Ship Bay this time around. It's been a while. We've been trying to catch an angle from this side for a very long time, but you pretty much have to hit it perfectly in order to see into this front right corner. But got some pretty cool views that show that front right corner. There is, of course, the welding station that's in the back corner over here, which I think we can see from here. Actually, I think there's an even better view of that one. Let me try this one. Yeah, so a bit dark in there, but you can see this is the welding station for the ships, and I think they used this for the entire ship, right? And then it also allows them to put aft sections in here, which they weren't able to do previously.
Yeah, this turntable, as soon as the nose cone and payload bay have been put together, they can stack the entire vehicle on this stand.
And it's got a turntable on the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And you can see the edges of that stand from here. Definitely appears to be an official stand and not just a bunch of scaffolding, which we've seen in the past. So that's a really cool thing I think about the ship bay, is that more so than the mega bay or the booster bay, they really are making everything like permanent structures instead of having any scaffolding at all. I think last time we saw there was still some scaffolding in the front left corner, but I think that may have been a very old picture the last time I actually saw that. But yeah, it's really cool the way that they're doing this with permanent structures. Kind of makes it seem like this might actually be one building that doesn't get demolished in the near future. So really cool the way that they've built this. And also in the front right corner over here, we can see a jig for the downcomer installation for the ship. So, and I'm a little bit confused on this one. Do they have to mount the pipes onto here before placing it in or lifting the ship on top of it? Like, how does that work?
So they take the three smaller downcomers for the RVACs are installed right where it's sitting right now, or maybe somewhere near it. I would imagine it's in here. And then the entire structure is lifted into the turntable with just the three in there. And then the center downcomer for the sea level Raptors gets installed into the middle of it after the jig is already inside, or at least that's how it was for 35. I'm pretty sure on some of the previous ones, we did actually see all four downcomers were in the jig before lifting. So perhaps they've changed that process just a little bit. The biggest thing is that with 35 is that they actually put the jig into the turntable before the A3 barrel was lifted. So they actually welded the A3 barrel of the LOX tank and did the downcomers in a single set of lifts instead of doing the barrel, pulling it off, then putting the downcomer jig in. and then having to put the vehicle back over. So they have already kind of eliminated one set of movements.
And then once that's complete, they just lift the entire ship with the downcomers off of this and then move it back out.
Yeah. Yeah, so the ship with the downcomers hanging off the common dome will get moved off of the turntable. They pull the jig out, put it off to the side, and then they either put the aft section into the turntable and then do the welding. I think it's been, I don't know that we've actually ever seen them tandem lift it, but they could actually come in tandem lift it as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would love to see like a video from SpaceX, like a time lapse of the full stacking process would be pretty awesome.
Yep, it's coming along, and it's actually really, that angle was really cool because it's surprising how much room is in that front right corner, because that jig is almost halfway in the back of the bay, and then with being able to see the Pez loader for ship 36 already in there on the front wall, there's actually a lot of space between that front right and where the turntable is for getting through to wherever that set of doors is that gets directly into the mega bay, or into the Star Factory, I mean.
In ship 36, the nose cone and payload section have already been stacked inside of the Star Factory, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so that was a big change, I guess. For the first time, the ship nose cone and payload section, which are usually stacked inside of the high bay, appear to have already been stacked inside of Star Factory. So that seems like they no longer need the high bay for that. So when that rolls out, it'll basically, the Pez loader is already in place waiting for it, essentially. So definitely speeding up the process of manufacturing and kind of streamlining things, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for the needing to move ship 34 and doing some maintenance on the 4-point lifters, we might have already seen 36 go in by now. But it seems like they're waiting for 34 to get out of the way. Essentially, one of the two 4-point lifters was being maintenanced over in Sanchez last week. That one that was being maintenanced was brought into the bay and is now the one that's being used for 34. The one we see in the picture is actually the other one now being maintenanced.
Okay.
That one just came off 35 after doing its stacking. So it seems like they may be doing some work. There's some bumper pads in there that would line up with the new catch points for ship. That it seems like they may be removing those bumpers from the 4-point lifters in preparation for the future manufacturing. We still don't think that those catch pins can be installed and still lift with the 4-point lifter, but there's modifications being done for future stuff.
Okay. Cool. And I guess moving on, I'm not sure if there's anything else really at the production site area other than the Star Factory. One thing I did want to mention, which I'm pretty sure this was finished last week or a few weeks before, but they did finish this road that goes back behind Mega Bay 2, which is pretty cool. And I believe they've actually also finished the sidewalk that goes all the way around the facility as well. So really cool if you're actually working there or living there to be able to circle the entire site easily now. Got full access to all areas. So wrapped up a lot of the major construction that was going on over here finally.
Yeah, and while we have this image here, there to the side of Mega Bay 2 there with that frame that we saw in Sanchez the last few weeks has been moved. Those white receivers that are on the top have been painted, and it's actually got casters underneath it now that is new recently. Not sure it really clears up what it's for. I think most of us are in general agreement that it has something to do with the Pez loader. There's still question mark of whether it's a rolling frame for under it or a lifting frame for above it. I think I might be the only one who thinks it's a lifting frame at this point. But
well, they already rolled it out and brought it. Did they take it into the Star Factory?
They did, but it was brought in. It was taken to the Star Factory on SPMTs, and it has its own set of legs, which is why I don't know that this is for underneath it, but the legs do look like they're only bolted to it, so perhaps the legs are just construction legs. I think we'll just need to wait and see a little bit yet.
Yeah. Cool. We'll move on to the Star Factory then. not a ton to talk about here, as it is mostly completed. One big thing, though, that did happen this week, and unfortunately I don't have the picture ready, but Starship Gazer got some pretty cool pictures looking at the inside of the building, which they had a very large Mars globe suspended from the ceiling. You know what? Maybe if somebody can throw that tweet into the live comms, I'll pull that up. But yeah, really cool Mars globe inside of here, and there was a few employees who have were commented on that image, and we're kind of just talking about how it looks on the inside. And from that, I kind of gathered that it seems like this building is open now. I don't know what the progress is on actually moving into the building, and thanks BJ for doing that. Yeah, here's a picture of the interior, looking from the outside, obviously. I guess this kind of answers a few questions. You can see that they still are doing some construction, at least on this floor. This upper floor looks like it may have computers already in there, or maybe that's just,
Looks like tables, so
yeah,
it
just
looks like
tables with
it's yeah.
and this floor, that's the mezzanine above there, I think. I can't tell if
Yeah,
these are just boxes that they're moving stuff with, or if that's
I think that's all I think we made
cubicle.
out that that's actually cubicle walls or that we see there both on that level and the level below. So
Nice.
those
Oh
two
yeah.
levels in the ground level look like they may be largely complete.
Yeah, I guess in that case, they probably have more than likely started moving anything that was inside of the Stargate building into this building. But what's really cool, you can see the Mars globe over what is the reception desk right down here, and just with the being able to see the second level of this, you can get an idea of how big this is. So pretty large globe there. I wonder if it rotates. Either
No,
way, really good sign that they are starting to actually move into this building, and of course that means that the uses of anything in this area are dwindling. I wouldn't be surprised within the next month or two to start seeing deconstruction of this. We do know that UG RTV, they sold this to SpaceX, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, so now it's fully under their ownership, which means it's they can pretty much demolish it whenever they want to. So that'll be interesting to see when they actually start to demolish this. Because what we're expecting with the Gigabay is that it will be constructed in sections. So if you start on this side and then work your way down, maybe building it in 2 or possibly 3 sections, that gives you a little bit more time to actually deconstruct the high bay. So if you removing this would probably be the first thing that we see. I guess destruction of the high bay may have to come sooner, depending on how they decide to do it. Dismantling it piece by piece will take quite a long time, and I don't know if dropping the structure is an option. I feel like it would be not quite as easy as it was with the mid bay, which they were able to cut pretty much all of the vertical and diagonal supports and then just drop it. I don't know if they, I wouldn't want to do it with this structure. I feel like explosives would be a little bit more ideal, but again, not sure if they're going to be wanting to do something like that on this property. So, but yeah, the Star Factory is looking very awesome, and things are moving really forward, really fast forward. They've also finished the road that goes through here. I think they had the 2 lanes on the outer edges that were still closed for a while, but yeah, got that open. I'm guessing this is like VIP parking in front of the Star Factory right here. But yeah, this is really cool the way that they've finished all of this.
Yeah, with just the last little bit of finishing up some landscaping along the front of the office building and the news section. I mean, they're really starting to tie up all the loose ends on just really being 100% done. With the outside, obviously, the inside is still going to take some time, outfitting and all that stuff. But having heard some of the employees saying they're already moving in to their new offices and stuff, it's great news.
Is this grass?
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, the hydro seeding on that first segment didn't take all too well.
Yeah. Did the wind blow it away or something?
Yeah, not sure. Don't let the SpaceX pictures from Booster 15 rollout fool you. It's not as green as what the X post made it look like.
Right. Some post processing on that image.
Oh yeah, but yeah, we're getting some more topsoil in there, and you can kind of see that some of those flower beds and stuff have already been started. Yeah, right in front of the office as well.
Yeah, that looks really cool. All right, I guess we can move on to the village area. Only few things to just mention over here. Even more housing arriving right now. That reminds me, we completely skipped over an area, which I'm going to go back to. So yeah, so some new housing being set up over here.
Yeah, and the clouds actually covering up. There's another 4 or 5 units right next to that one that are being formed for. This image is clear, but that empty lot to the left of it is also now being prepared. And you can see they're starting to put formwork down for the slab.
Yeah, this is like a legit village now. I mean, it always was, but there's nothing else in here other than housing at this point, and the restaurant.
Yeah, parking and the clinic are the only things that in the restaurant are all that's not housing of some form.
Pretty much, yeah, and they're making some progress. So they did add the ones back here as well too, on top of these ones, which were I believe about a month ago. So those are pretty closely packed together. And then part of what will eventually be the rec center. I don't think this is the rec center. I think this is just the pool house for the pool. Like
yeah, I think we'll see some more rec center related stuff being built next to the pool. But yeah, so far it's just the pool that's been built.
Yeah, and on that note, the area that I skipped over, go back and touch on that because tons of progress over there. So this is basically the was originally labeled as a shopping center, and I don't have a full image showing the entire thing, I don't think, so I'll just like scroll through it. But yeah, you can see that they've gotten some apartment buildings well underway down here. I think these are they almost look like duplexes, but they're not, because I think these are like 3 floors on each apartment. Or sorry, 1 floor.
2 floors.
Two
There's a great.
floors?
Yeah, there are 2 floors. I don't think the apartments span a floor. I think each of these, well, this one that you're pointing at now, I think is actually 4 units, 2 per level for 2 levels. This week was good to see this because this is the first time we've seen what the internal wall layout was of them. All the rest of them were either bare floors or covered roofs. So we hadn't been able to see, like, are they 1 unit all the way front to back, but it's looking like they're 2 units, a front and a back unit.
Are you sure this isn't 3 floors?
Yeah, I know there was we talked about it in the show and tell, but the 2 levels of scaffolding are the one. That second level scaffold is in the middle of the wall. It's deceiving.
Right.
It's a bit deceiving. It's a bit
And
deceiving.
these are raised, right?
Yeah, and they're raised off the ground. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, you can see that on this one. Yeah, so you have dual units right here, then singles in between.
It's something like that. I'm curious. I'll be curious once the scaffold is out of the middle. The way that some of the foundation work is, it looks like the breezeway between each pair of big and small could potentially mean that they're together, but I'm not sure. There's piles, timber piles that are in between in a couple spots. But they may not necessarily be structural. I'm not sure what they are.
Yeah, these are a lot heavier duty than anything in the village. I imagine they'll probably have some good insulation in the walls.
Yeah,
So
awfully nice and close to the launch site.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can be in them during launch because they're just outside the exclusion zone. So
That would be pretty awesome. I imagine they're probably going to have some sort of like observation area of their own over here, or even probably being on top of these would be enough, really.
Roof deck would be amazing.
yeah, nice roof deck. Yeah, it all depends on what they build here in the empty spot where the drill rig is setting up for whatever is being built over here.
Yeah. So these over here are these don't look the same length as these, but it looks like it's part of that same complex, right?
I
Yeah.
think they're actually the same. I think this is what those other ones look like. I think they're roughly the same depth because those other ones hang over where the excavation is. You can see where the timber piles extend. So uh, they're a little longer than what those footings go. But essentially, that's just one long one and then a short one in the middle with a long one on the end.
Okay.
But if you look at the bottom of the image, you can see the extra row of timber piles down below. That'll be part of these buildings as well. It's the same way on the far side of these other ones.
Like behind them.
The last segment on that far right one, you can kind of see it. You can see how it extends over. So like that, from one pile to the next, the building hangs over and is elevated a little extra. We think maybe parking spaces
Yeah, that makes sense.
underneath there.
Very nice. Yeah, this is I mean, I can only imagine with the amount of employees they have, they're looking forward to being able to keep them closer instead of, a large portion of their employees having to live all the way over in SPI or Brownsville. Being closer to the actual work site helps a lot. So down here, it looks like we have several different types of houses going on here. These are actual, probably family-sized homes, and then we have, I'm guessing these are probably for tiny homes.
Mm,
Well,
they're,
go ahead, Alex.
yeah, they look like they're going to extend sort of like townhome duplexes that the lower level will probably be parking because you can see three rows of piles on the upper level.
Up here.
Yeah. So if the building extends all the way to the front of that grade beam,
And
because yeah, in SoCal we have tons of the sort of 2-story units or 4-story units with 2 units each. They look exactly like this when they're building them.
yeah, this makes a lot more sense now with the way that they cut these out. At first, I thought they were gonna they were just slowly excavating all of this, but now it kind of makes sense that why they stopped like this. Have we figured out where the actual shopping center is going to be, though?
Probably
they're-
where it's the go on, BJ.
Yeah, up above there, they've been added. This newest clearing right on the river has started probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, at least in full force. So we're thinking maybe that this would be the area that'll be the non-residential area that kind of supports all this apartment building.
Right. I don't think I have a view that shows all of it. Oh, wait, hold on. This is close. Yeah, okay, there we go. So yeah, that shows that full backside over there. Yeah, I mean, I would hope I was expecting that shopping center to be a little bit larger, I guess. But I mean, that is quite a good sized area.
Yeah, I mean this whole site here, pretty much. I think we looked at it. I looked it up the other day, and it was something like, I think it's 18 acres or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I might even be wrong on that. It was a couple weeks ago that I looked it up.
Yeah, I think we'll probably soon see them expand even further. Probably once they have the ability to acquire that land. So cool. I guess now that we're done with this plus the build site area, I can go ahead and move us over to the launch site.
If you wouldn't mind, I got a
Before I do
couple.
that, I'll take some questions.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. I want to thank the Nerdy One for a 25 Romanian Lou super chat. Says, first super chat I've sent here. Just wanted to say thank you for everything that you do. Also subbed to Zach's Patreon. Just great content. We appreciate that. Thank you. A super sticker from Gary7 Sailing for $4.99 said, good job. I've got a question from Crane Man. Is there any sign of moving stuff from the Stargate building to the new office building?
The only sign we've seen is people, and their word
La-
saying what it looks like on the inside. I don't know if we've seen actual moving,
Yeah.
but
Last week's flyovers, we didn't see any of the moving vans at Stargate itself, but I think we've seen a lot of Penske 24-foot box trucks at Stargate, and we actually did see some in that office entry cul-de-sac, whatever we want to call it, that little U-turn
we're
by
here.
the parking. The one on the side where the reserve parking is.
The VIP
Where
parking.
you highlight. Yep, the VIP parking. The spots are labeled as reserved, so probably VIP. But we saw a number of Penske trucks offloading there, where we had ground cameras had seen potentially they were being filled at Stargate, unloaded here.
Okay, awesome.
Cool. And then Raphael Levitt asking, why are there still so many cars parked on the street and not in the parking garage?
Well, the parking garage is not 100% open yet. I think they're definitely parking on at least 2, possibly 3 of the levels, but as you can tell, they're still not parking on the roof yet. So not really sure what the purpose is, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think as long as they still have parking there, it is faster, slightly faster for some people to park here instead of there. But yeah, I mean, as far as Sanchez site goes, though, that's a little bit different. Anybody who's working inside the Sanchez site is probably going to park along this area. But yeah, for the most part, I think it just comes down to it not being fully open.
All right. Final question regarding the village from Mike Smith. Did SpaceX buy the old motel area, that old concrete broken down shell?
Wasn't that right here?
Yes.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, she gone. I wonder when they removed that. It's been a long time since I've looked, but cool. All right. Well, I guess in that case, we will go ahead and move over to the launch site, and we'll start with the Pad B area where most of our attention is going to be focused today. And I want to find a great side angle of this so we can see the flame trench better.
Real quick,
Actually, yeah.
I missed one. I want to thank Callistia Lee for a $50 PayPal donation, who says keep on flying. Thank you very much, Callistia.
These overhead shots are really cool. So this is a nice overhead shot that looks, it's a little bit below the tower, so it's not like a perfect overhead shot. I think that confused some people when they were wondering how this lines up with the trench as far as the center of the launch mount goes. But this is, I guess, a decent representation of where the center of the launch mount will be, which honestly was definitely expected. But still a really cool view. You can see that they have fully excavated the trench and they've gotten the what we call the blinding layer down. So basically, this involves cropping all of the tops of the CFA piles. So they basically have a little machine that grabs it from the top and pulls off the a few feet of concrete and then exposes the rebar underneath. And after that, they lay down this blinding layer of concrete, which kind of just, I want to say, like, gives them like a water barrier for their surface that they're going to put all of the rebar down. So that's going to be the next step for this, is putting down a lot of rebar cages down here, and also forming up the walls as well too. So the exposed rebar will tie into all of that and basically become one continuous surface essentially. So yeah, this is pretty awesome how fast they're moving on this, and this angle doesn't really do it justice how deep this thing is. You can't even really tell like that. Some of these side views show it a little bit better, but definitely a deep trench. I think the best we've been able to tell, it's somewhere between 15 and 20 meters deep.
I'm of opinion it's 12-ish, 12 to 14, but I could be very wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's still very, very, very deep trench. Got some interesting features in it that I've noticed. specifically, that seems like they have some temporary drainage set up, but I'm not sure. I think these may just be almost shallow wells that they're using to suck the water from below this.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think they're actual like permanent drainage. So one thing that we have kind of been expecting that they would need is a way to almost like a sump pump or something like that, because after the deluge system continues several seconds after the booster actually clears the pad, so you'll end up with a pretty good amount of water left on the bottom of this. So they will more than likely have some sort of way to pump all of that out, but I don't think these are necessarily related to that. I think it's all just water control for construction purposes only. But yeah, you can see that pump right here sucking out water from that what I'm labeling as a well, I guess. But yeah, tons of progress on this. You can also see the edges of the full commodities trench right here, which is extending all the way down to this area, which has been fully framed out right now. It looks like this may be the first wall section right here. I can't tell. I don't think there's any formwork down here, so this was a little bit confusing.
That's
Yeah.
the
Oh, it's just rebar extending out.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the dark long things coming out are from the tiebacks. Why
Down
they
here.
didn't trim them, I don't know. Yeah,
Okay. So a little bit confusing down here, which I think these may just be temporarily positioned right here. They look like they're going in this direction.
Yeah, I think they're just sitting there awaiting installation.
Yeah, I believe this is the methane drain or bleed line.
yeah. There's two others that are curious.
Over here.
Yeah,
Right, yeah, because you have the massive liquid oxygen and liquid methane feed lines, or I guess LOX, they also drain out of the same line. Methane, methane is a bit confusing to me. They do label it as a fill drain, so I do at times wonder if they're truly draining through it, or if it's all through the bleed. I have a feeling it's a mixture of both, but I haven't studied the tank farm plumbing enough in a while to tell if they even have the ability to drain backwards for the methane.
the bulk methane does flow backwards.
Through the fill drain line.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, that would make sense because your D tank would be way slower if you were doing all of it through the bleed line. But you can see just how massive these pipes are. There's a normal sized ladder right there. Alex, what was the diameter of these pipes again?
24. So they're around 30, 32 with all their jackets. They're probably twice as big as the current pipes at Pad A.
Yeah. So this kind of clears the way for increasing their prop load times. It'll be interesting if they update the size of the booster QD ports, because in my opinion that's always been a limiting factor of how fast you can actually fill the booster. So it doesn't necessarily matter how large the pipes are if the nozzle you're using to inject it into the booster is still small. So I think we may see some changes to the booster QD soon. The ones for the ship are larger as well too, right?
Yes. They've
And
upsized everything.
this isn't the best view to see that from. It's a good view of that trench right here. So we've talked about this on past episodes. The ones running on this side of the trench are for the booster, and the ones on this side of the trench are for the ship.
I think the lower ones are methane and the upper ones are LOX.
Oh, right. Yeah. So tower and launch mount both coming on one side, and same thing on this one. So you have 1, 2. Are there 2 down here for
Yes.
LOX, and then there are 3,
4.
2 from
4
yeah,
for methane. So they're bleed for both tower and launch mount in here.
Yeah, they're not
combined.
combining them yet.
Okay, that is interesting. Yeah, tons of progress on this trench though, which for the most part seems to be completed. And this was something that I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the episode, was that up until this week they did not really have the ability to transport a booster to Pad A, and that was because of this trench and the construction in this area. There was no way to actually move around here. So it seems like they've gotten a cover over the trench, which are these steel panels right here. That you can see that they've. I think they've also got wood on top of it. I can't really tell.
Yeah, it does look like I think they actually might be steel plates, additional steel plates that they put over the top.
Okay.
They're just dirt because hundreds of trucks have been back across that recently.
Right. Yeah, so they're finally covering this trench, and what I can't tell is whether or not these are being welded onto this, but I don't think with the walls of the concrete, I don't know if there's embeds anywhere other than right here that would allow them to actually weld it down.
There's a ledge all the way down there that they sit on. The entire ledge has a solid plate embed in it.
Okay.
So they're likely welded down, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's as simple as just getting down into the trench and welding them, because it's a pretty large trench which you can probably climb inside of and do that kind of work.
Yeah, those panels when they arrived, they were stacked 3 high on a semi trailer and were pretty much as tall as the semi, so they're probably 2 to 3 feet tall.
Okay. Another really cool detail that y'all can see here is the footprint of the water deluge tank farm. So I think the plans for this originally had it down in this area, but you can see it's a little bit shifted upwards a little bit. And there are pedestals for. I'm a little bit split on this. I think that this is for 3 tanks on each side, but y'all were saying that this is for 6 over here. Or 5. Sorry.
There's room for 5 on each side. So far, over at the Port Connector Road, there are 4 matching large tanks that should fit on the left set of foundations, which is what took us from thinking initially 3. Partially because also if there was only 3, we would see 2 pedestals. We would see 2 pedestals right next to each other instead of having a big gap between each tank.
Yeah, so these are the deluge tanks. Well, part of these are a mixture. So some of these appear to be the ones in the back row up here appear to be more than likely either for the tank farm, or these in particular I have to imagine are for the air separation plant. But these
actually the 2 on the left, the 2 verticals on the left are actually for the 2 circle pads that are behind the methane farm.
Oh yeah, right.
The other 3 smaller verticals are a little less known. The mid-sized one, its twin was already placed in the tank farm, so we'll have to see where that one goes. But the 4 horizontals we definitely think are the bigger of the 2 types of water tanks for the deluge.
Are these vertical heat exchangers?
I don't think so. They look like just the top fill for the methane tanks. They're very odd construction. But at McGregor's, they have a bunch of similar tanks.
Yeah, I guess we'll get a good idea once they actually install them. It'll be easier to tell what's going on with those. But one thing we do know for sure is that these are water tanks down here. You can see the outlet on the bottom. These are very similar. I would say they're similar to the ones on Pad A, but they're actually closer to the ones at Massey's. Nearly identical. I think they're larger. It's difficult to tell from this angle, though.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I did a couple of things when we first saw them, and I'm 95% sure they actually may be identical, other than like where the port exit actually is. The size, I think, is the same.
Okay. So
they look bigger when you kind of look at them as 2 separate areas, but they do appear to be the same.
And we're thinking that these are that you were saying in 5.
Well, initially we saw that there's embeds in the concrete for 5 on each. Obviously, we're missing pedestals farthest to the left there, which is kind of lining up with the fact that we've only seen 4 of those largest tanks, and we've only seen 22 out of the 24 pedestals. So I'm starting to think that they've got room to put a fifth one, but maybe don't have the hardware for a fifth one right now. Kind of future expansion, maybe. I don't know why they wouldn't just do it all at once, but. And then the right side, we haven't seen any tanks yet for that one. The even spacing of the pedestals is kind of, and the evidence of the bigger tanks kind of has sent us in that, okay, there's probably 5, because otherwise the second and fourth gap, you'd think that they'd be tight up against each other, like some of the other spots over in the tank farm. To put the tanks right next to each other, why would you put that big gap between and not have a tank there when they're evenly spaced?
Right. You think I'm kind of thinking that these will probably be 2 separate systems, one for the deck, obviously, and then one for the trench. But I would imagine that the one for the deck doesn't need to be anywhere near as large as the one for the trench.
And McGregor's, they use a small tank as the gas generator and the large tank. So potentially they could split out, have 4 or 5 independent water circuits.
Yeah, that was kind of the other thought that was the other thought that I had with these other ones. Initially, I kind of thought that they were all going to be the same spacing, but these 4, the right side pads being narrower, and the fact that we haven't seen any heat and tube, or what is it, the tube and core heat exchangers like we have at Massey's in any other location, I almost do wonder if that'll be where it's one set of water tanks, one set of heat exchangers for the water tanks. Which I think is kind of what Alex was getting, and I think that's what Alex was kind of getting at there, hitting.
No, it'll be a separate tank and a heat exchanger too.
Okay.
But yeah, where the pickup truck into the left or right of it should be where they'll have them. It's an odd setup. I'm not sure spacing how it's going to work.
I guess I'll move us on a little bit just because we're apparently already over time, which I didn't realize. But I want to circle back really quick to the trench. This is something I kind of hinted at, I guess, at the beginning of the episode. We have some framework down here, which is looking like it's going to go in this area down here. Seems pretty clear. And more than likely, this is some sort of structure that will support the QD and most likely also the water manifolds as well, if I had to guess, considering that the inlets for the water are on this side of the table. So this is probably one large structure to support all of that. And again, I think this is another hint at it being an interchangeable structure because it is completely separate from the launch mount. Of course, that could just be doing that to get it further away, so that it actually has to reach over further to reach the booster, and so it can then swing further out of the way, which gets it away from the plume. But I don't know if they're going to have the same issues on this side of the launch mount with the QD, as far as like having it be exposed directly to the exhaust plume during the pad avoidance maneuver. And sorry, Alex, I know you hate that term, but yeah, either way, it does seem like we're getting a pretty large gantry or structure of some sort to support all that. And I know that Chrome Kiwi has been working on representation of what this might look like. I think Alex, you have as well too.
Yeah, I haven't finished it, but if you look at the diagonal piece, the first horizontal is about the above that is going to be probably where the base of the OLM, and it'll extend almost to the top of it. So it's around 5 meters from the ground plane, it looks like.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing there'll probably be something on top above this as well too.
Yeah, at some point, however the QD is going to be connected. The corner posts appear to have a slightly different top than those.
Are you thinking these ones will go down in the commodity trench?
No, they'll sit on those twin embeds that
Right
are in
here?
pink.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
you can see the long one and the short ones right there.
yeah. And the short with one little leg sticking out will be on the base of the commodities trench.
Uh,
You right where
hmm?
yeah, right there. No,
No,
no, you were right on it.
yeah, there's 6 of
Up,
those ones just above it. Not the one with the angle piece, but the straight one with the single arm.
Okay, tell me which direction to go.
straight
Down
down,
one.
right there.
There.
This one.
Too far. Too far.
This.
There.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one. That
yeah.
one.
You should have said a T. I would have saw that.
Okay, and directly above it, it connects to it. The flat plate will bolt to the top of the angle structure, so it's upside down.
You said this is upside down?
Yeah, so see the plate on the right of the column,
This one?
and no, the one you were on,
Okay. This
right at
right
the
here?
very end. Yeah, it looks like that plate should bolt to the top cross member of the diagonal arm.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in
So
summary, essentially, these ones, the angled ones will come up from the top, and they actually they'll reach out over to the inside wall, essentially, of the commodities culvert, and then the other straight beams come up off the embeds that are right on the edge of the concrete, and kind of so it takes those 2 levels, and then it comes together at the top of the OLM.
Right. Yeah, that is going to look pretty crazy, and I think it's good though. I guess I'm not going to go too deep into it since we're for a variety of reasons, but I think this is a very, very welcome change from the first pad, and I think this will probably turn out way better. This is more than likely get them actually to the point where they're able to truly reuse, rapidly reuse stage 0, because in my opinion, I think it's basically impossible with pad A. Yeah, so moving on, the others on extending from the box on the other side of the commodities trench, or sorry, this is the fluids bunker
Fluids
essentially,
bunker.
right?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what we've been calling it, anyways.
So basically, you'll probably see just a bunch of valve assemblies in here, right?
yes,
So these pipes will come up in here, a bunch of valve assemblies in there, which is interesting because in the original fluids bunker, they had one supply for LOX and one supply for methane, and then that split off into supplies for the tower and the booster. But I think they redid that so that there was one dedicated supply for all 4 of those. I guess it's technically 6 of them, if you factor, or 5 of them, sorry, if you factor in the methane bleed lines. But these, I imagine, will have 6 individual valve assemblies in here, which will then come out on this side, do another expansion loop right here. I'm missing something. So
that'll head
where's the one that
straight
goes to
down.
the tower? Oh, it'll
There's
come out of here and into the tower, right?
yeah, and right on the edge, there's 2 that'll will go to the tower.
Yeah, that left hole, the left hole in the bunker that you were just highlighting is probably going to be where the gaseous lines go for the tower, and then there's another hole in that fluids bunker on the right, on the face underneath those safety nets. That'll probably be for the actual prop lines that go a little. I think I have that right? Not inverted,
Yes.
Alex.
No,
Yeah,
that's right.
And then the OLM comes in that other one. Why it doesn't go through the wall instead of, it looks like it's going to go up and over for some reason. Don't know why.
It's going to be busy in there. That's all I know. There's going to be a lot of equipment in such a very small space.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of now that we've seen that the OLM trench is not going through the wall, is maybe that the valve assemblies for the tower will be down in the lower level and the booster ones will be like on top of the level at grade or something. I just can't make sense why they would come up the wall, back down in, unless they're going to cut the wall out, but there's rebar in those areas, so that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah. Either way, tons of progress. It's looking really cool. I'm glad that we get these weekly flyovers so we can actually understand these things, because without it, it would be near impossible to understand how all of this stuff works. So continuing on, I guess I'll move us away from the pad B and over to the tank farm. So
yeah, the only thing I could think of to touch on, since we didn't have a show last week, would just be that the electrical bunker. It looks like the new electrical bunker is being built.
Right. Sorry about that.
If we had a show last week to see it, we could breeze by it because we would have touched on it. But that whole area looks like new bunker, probably going to have the old one go away once the new one's built. I think that's my guess on it.
I thought the plans had both of these here.
They did.
Did they? I guess I didn't notice that, but I feel like there's other structures around and near the old one that prevent some of the piles that are right next to it from being used. So I guess that's why I've kind of been in the feeling that it's going to go away.
Because I would imagine that a good reason for it to go away is because when they eventually have the air separation plant over here, the only path that they have to run supply over to the tank farm would be through here, basically underneath the water tanks. So I think this would clear up some space for them to actually run those lines over to the tank farm if they remove this building.
And like BJ was saying, there's a ton of piles where that rebar is, and on the left, on the between the vertical tanks and the great building, there are a ton of piles between. Yeah, just to right through there. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially in there, all the conduits went in there, but they've only stubbed about a quarter of the conduits into the old bunker there. I think the reason that they didn't put the rest in there is because perhaps they're going to go over to those vaults that are on the other side.
Right.
When that building is no longer there. But like Alex was saying, there's also some buried piles between the vertical tanks and the electrical bunker. They were mixed. They were right in the middle of all that electrical conduit that is probably for some more tanks or something that will eventually go there, meaning that the building can't be there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Moving us over to the tank farm area. Find a better picture for that. I want a good side angle of this. But lots of updates down here. I'm going to try and breeze us through it relatively fast, as much as I can. But they have started to insulate these heat exchangers down here. Had a new delivery this week, which right now they've only seen one of them arrive. So if those of you who remember the large fans that were delivered this week, I think I have that. I think I have that on my page, so I can probably show that really quick. This wasn't the greatest angle of it when they made this little U-turn right here. Hold on a second. So some pretty large fan boxes right there, and those are actually installed on the other side of a to either side of a I want to call it a plenum, but I don't think that's the right word for it.
Kind of a plenum.
Yeah, so basically you have fan, box, fan over here. And so I'm sure most of you are well aware of what it looks like at the tank farm while they're loading, while they're doing prop load. So basically it becomes like a lake on the whole launch site because of just how much venting there is. And so I think, and Alex can probably correct me on this, this is their way of reducing that a little bit. So instead of just dumping a huge cloud of nitrogen gas, it seems like they're planning to dilute that a little bit with just regular air.
Yeah, that's how it's appearing currently.
So I'm guessing you'll have nitrogen gas coming in from one side, air coming in from the other, and then shooting straight up out of this.
Or there'll be a bit of a chimney, and they'll have the gas around the chimney to get sort of the Venturi effect to pull it.
Right. So pulling gas in through the chimney, air in through one side, and then out the other.
Nah, straight up. There's turning
So
vanes.
straight up. Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
on either side.
Yeah, so that will be interesting. I imagine if it goes straight up, that's going to be a pretty interesting look. But I imagine that may end up even curving in a different direction so that it's not going straight up in the air because that would look like a
Yeah.
fountain, basically. But not quite as bad with being diluted with air. Probably be, I'm guessing, half as thick as it is normally. But yeah, still some interesting changes in order to I guess improve visibility on the site. I don't know if I wonder if that's truly what it's all about, or if there's an actual reason to do it, other than just pure
Safety.
visibility purposes.
Safety. Since it's very cold, it'll hugs the ground, and it's could choke you from. I
Yeah,
mean, no oxygen in case the red team or somebody has to go to
on
the
the site.
site.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, next to that, this pretty awesome assembly of valves and whatnot over here for those two heat exchangers. We also have what appears to be the new pumps for Pad B. I don't know if I can't tell if these are going to split and cover both Pad A and B, or if this is purely for Pad B. What do you think, Alex?
Right now, it looks like it's strictly for B. And this is probably the start of the ship pumps.
Right. And so basically, what we have here is a valve assembly right here, a combined manifold, and then this right here is one of the casings for the pumps. So the I think the actual sleeve goes inside of this, and then the pump drops down inside of that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's basically suspended inside of this frame, which is very similar to what they do at Massey's. And so I'm guessing there'll be another one right here. They just haven't brought that frame in yet.
Right. They installed this on Saturday, I think.
Okay. And I guess we can basically just see that there's at least two more right here. So that's four pumps, right?
Yeah,
Do you think they go all the way across?
there's 9 slots. There's 5, and then there's some control conduits come up, and then there's some
Right
more valve. Yeah, there's more valve sleds on the GSC building, but it's hard to tell how they're going to integrate.
here? So are there pumps on this row too?
No, that's a supply side. Directly underneath that, there's a large oxygen line, and then
Then it splits off and goes to each of the pumps up here.
yeah,
Yeah, and then if you look up to the top left there's two S pipes. Those will actually connect from the
From
pump
here up to here, up
up.
to the
Yeah.
pump.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
and
this is pretty awesome. The only thing I don't like, which confuses me, because it seems to me like you got to come in through this direction and then push back through the heat exchangers. I don't
Yep.
get why the pumps or the heat exchangers aren't way over here. That doesn't make sense.
There's a few other things that seem added complexity for no good effect.
Yeah, like is this going to loop back underneath?
That should extend to and hook to the rack.
Oh
'Cause
wait, sorry. So they're they're feeding down this direction through the heat exchangers, right?
yeah. So
Okay,
that black pipe on the left goes to the heat exchangers,
right.
and there's a cable holder or a pipe holder right next to it that'll probably be for the booster.
It doesn't. This doesn't look long enough or wide enough. Like it's nowhere near as large as the. Oh wait, sorry, that's a vent pipe, right?
Yeah, those pipes are a lot larger than they appear
And up
from
here,
up here.
yeah, I guess because the vents are so large that it makes these look small. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and they're not
impressive.
vacuum jacketed either. So
hmm Um, and you have some ideas for this area?
the only idea, if there's a mirror for it on the methane side, it might be the valve assemblies for going to the tanks or to the vehicle. but
You're talking about in
that's
this area?
yeah. Under that crane, there's an identical pad to the one by the vaporizers.
Okay.
It's so far these are the ship side is or the methane side is a chopped down version of the lock side.
Okay. Yeah, then we have the pedestal for those 2 tanks that we saw at the port of Brownsville. And so this right here is a similar pad to this one, which would basically be for methane.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
going
it's
to look a lot
crazy.
different from pad A. And I like it. It's I can basically envision it now that I kind of understand that. It's going to be pretty impressive. And being right next to the road is the only part that sucks a little bit because being able to see the pad, you won't be able to see the launch mount pretty much at all from ground level anymore from this direction because these things are pretty tall.
Yeah, it's gonna block a lot from the hoppy pad.
I
Well,
almost hope they don't.
not to mention that the protection wall is going to extend all the way over there too. So that's a lot of stuff in the way.
Yeah, that kind of does suck that there'll be a wall at the front because it'd be cool to just actually be able to see through all of this when you're at the visiting the pad. But either way, still really cool. I do wonder about the above ground choice versus below. Like what kind of led to that? I think it's probably just easier overall. But yeah, still vastly different from the original tank farm.
Yeah, I wonder if the elevation of the pump housings and stuff it has to do with not having the pump sleeves and casings down in the concrete and having it up top where you won't have the thermal shock on the concrete and whatnot. I wonder if there's issues with that in the old farm.
Well, I mean, you do have the actual, and I'll go back to the other image. You do have the sleeve, or sorry, the sleeve that goes inside of this has insulation on the outside of it, in between the sleeve and the casing. So I wonder if that was even really a thing.
Okay. That was just an off thought that I just had on that, on
Yeah.
why they were doing the elevated like at Massey's.
Mm-hmm.
The running the pipes is easier when you have multiple elevations and you could at this level will be this type of process.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, stack your ins and outs on top of each other and stuff instead of having to have them all side by side, and you can use that vertical space better. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And your liquid oxygen from the tank farm is they started running that as well too, which I guess we can maybe see in this. They're actually lifting it at the time of this. It looks like no.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So this
also
pipe right here.
Yeah.
And these actually connect. These you can see the ports on the side of this, which are basically for these 3 tanks. So we essentially have 8 LOX tanks, 4 nitrogen tanks, and then 7 methane tanks.
Correct.
Yeah. Actually, technically, we have 9 methane tanks if you count these ones. So
Yeah,
that's
but 3 of
wow.
them.
still
Wow.
confusing what's going on with that.
And then that other oddball one, if they ever plummet into methane, would be even another one. The small one.
Oh, this one? This one that's just here?
Yeah. If they would ever decide to use that one, that could be methane too.
I almost feel like they forgot about it.
Probably.
So one other detail, we have another bunker coming right here, which is similar to the one that's down here. I would say identical, but there's only 2 rows. So it seems like it's probably a control room for all of the tank farm systems down here, which is actually similar to this building down here. So if I had to guess, it's probably just an identical version of basically the same thing as this down here for Pad B.
Except it should be much better protected.
Right. This is amazing. It's just so massive, such a big tank farm. Like you won't see this at any other launch site. Even KSC won't look quite like this. I imagine the storage at KSC will actually. Well, I guess it depends on if they put 2 Starship launch pads at Pad 39A or not. But if not, you probably won't see anywhere near the size of this tank farm anywhere else.
No.
Yeah, I forget the math side, what the math is on that, but those like the methane spherical tank at 39A is like has capacity of like almost all of this tank farm, methane wise.
Really? So it's
Yeah.
about equivalent to the 7 tanks, or including these 2 over here?
I haven't done the math on everything, but I remember when I was doing some of the stuff on that, the spherical tanks just have a really, really high efficiency of volume because
Right.
the insulation layer comparatively, I mean, these hot dog tanks are very, very low in efficiency. I mean, the exterior volume versus what the actual interior volume, when you take away the insulation layer, they're very inefficient. They're only like 40% efficient. 40% of the exterior volume is actually usable.
And you have less heat bleed through because you're suspending it on less points of these long hot dog tanks.
Sorry, you're saying that the capacity in this is larger?
No, the ones that the round ones, as BJ was saying, are a lot more efficient.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, something like I'd have throwing it's a very ballpark, but like the spherical ones at 39, like if you look at the exterior dimensions of the sphere, like 70% of the internal area can hold propellant, whereas the hot dog tanks are only less than 50%.
Right. That makes sense. Cool. Well, I think we should probably touch on some Pad A stuff if there's anything y'all wanted to mention. I don't really have anything other than the obviously static fire test of Booster 15. Anything you guys wanted to add?
Not really. There hasn't been a whole lot. I mean, we saw some of the cladding related things over the last couple of weeks. I mean, we see here that Booster 15 was getting ready for its static fire this morning. But I mean, in the last couple of weeks, Pad A hasn't had a whole lot to talk about. It's very quiet. I mean, they've been doing refurbishment work, but no large ticket items that are visible from the outside looking in.
Right. Cool. Well, in that case, Astro Joe, do we have any launch site questions? I'm sure there's got to be some.
Yeah, I removed some as you were addressing them as they were coming in, but I was pretty busy when this question came in, and pretty busy in the background. From Sites Family, where would the mount be positioned on the flame trench? It seems it's not symmetrical over the trench.
It will be. It's a little deceiving and hard to see since we don't have a straight down. But there's 9 rows of piles in the trench. It'll be centered on the trench. And if you look at the top of this image where that bundle of conduits is, just to the left of the yellow excavator, that is about the center. That's about, yep, right there. That's about the center line of what the gantry structure is going to be. I would put the center somewhere right about there. Maybe 1 row of piles up. 1, 2. Yeah, that pile right there would be my best guess. That would be the center.
Is there any connection or indication to that pipe coming off the top that has a yellow end to it?
What's a methane pipe? Why it's marked like that? I don't know. It's probably just protection.
All right, cool. And then the ever-present question from Raphael Levitt. What's your best guess of when the Tower B trench and pad will be ready for testing?
Well, the Chopsticks will probably be operational by maybe sometime beginning of next month. They have that was one thing we didn't cover actually, was that they have begun or nearly finished. Well, let me say they're somewhere in the process of reeving the cables through the traveling block. You can see actually the rope that's going through them right now. So they are, I think, currently in the process of pulling through all the cable. I'm not sure if they've actually finished that yet, but yeah, they're working very quickly to get this operational. They do have the cable chain, which carries all the hydraulics and comms equipment or lines up to the carriage, that's connected. I'm sure there's probably some work they still need to do to the actual chopsticks themselves. But, and then there's one of the hydraulic actuators for, I'm not sure which arm it was, has been connected already as well too. Wait, actually, I think it's this right here.
Yep, right there. That's the left one that's been installed.
Yeah, so one more hydraulic actuator needs to be installed still. But other than that, they're moving very quickly to get the chopsticks operational. So, we're kind of expecting that they will be using Pad B to catch ship, what would that be, 36? 35?
Maybe 35.
Yeah, potentially on Flight 9. So that won't necessarily require the trench to be finished yet. All they will need is enough area clear here for them to bring in the ship transport stand and set it back down on top. I hope that catch is successful so it doesn't damage the actual trench itself. But if anything, it may fall, it may land over to the side. I don't know. I think it makes more sense to catch over the center. But that's obviously we're gonna have to wait to see how that works. As far as the whole trench, the whole Pad B being operational, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on that one. I would say end of summer probably, maybe earlier.
Yeah. I kind of feel like third quarter of this year at the earliest, maybe even closer to the end of the year.
I'm the forever optimist by May or June.
All right, sounds good. Not a question, but a message of gratitude from Jean-Francois Harder. My pocket has a hole, but my heart will be for you, RGV forever. Thanks a lot. And I'm hearing rumblings that we've got a SpaceX tweet about the static fire.
Oh, I just got a reminder about the Super Bowl, which I will be watching. Cool images of that static fire here. No video. Yeah, there's definitely some color grading going on here. But still awesome picture either way. Cool. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I got one final one here from Phil regarding the oxygen system for flight for Mauricio. I asked Mauricio if he wanted to come on and address this, but he didn't have a microphone prepared. But I do have an answer prepared from him himself. The question is, with the flying, how is the oxygen tanks and equipment doing now that you've had a few flights to test? Have you had to refill them yet? And the answer from Mauricio, as far as the oxygen system, we're still using it at the moment. We already ran out of oxygen and need to refill. The airport does provide this service, and we will be inquiring the rate on our next flight. I would say that the oxygen tank system is good for 6 flights, more or less, and really helpful. We really appreciate the support for allowing us to be comfortable on these flights. So that's great news. Thanks everybody for that support. And I would also like to give a shout out to Mrs. RGV for her birthday. Happy birthday, Mrs. RGV. Thank you for supporting Mauricio and all you do and giving us nerds all of his time away from you. We appreciate you. Happy birthday.
Awesome. Yeah. Happy birthday. Mrs. I don't want to butcher his last name, but Mrs. RGV. Yeah, really appreciate all the hard work and getting these flyover images. And and on that note, I've almost forgot to mention this. As far as we can tell, is the 199th flyover. So I think next week will be the 200th flyover that Mauricio has ever done of Starbase, which is a pretty crazy milestone. I'm sure he almost has a hard time imagining the fact that he's been up there 200 times, but really, really crazy. And, really appreciate the fact that this has continued on for I think this is the 6th year at this point. So that's really awesome being able to go back and look at the full library of images all the way back to my earliest ones are 2019. Yeah, on that note, if you guys are patrons or members of the channel, you do have access to all of those same images going all the way back to the very first flyover. So for those of you who have been supporting us or would like to support, that is the best way to do it. And you also get a pretty crazy benefit of being able to go back and view the full history of all of this stuff. So yeah, make sure you do that if you haven't already. Also, by the way, we have not mentioned it yet this show, but do us a favor and hit that like button as well if you have not yet. It appears we have about 600 and 1,300 of you in here, so appreciate how many of y'all are in here watching this with us today, especially with the Super Bowl coming up. So yeah, thanks for being here with us. And I guess on that note, I will probably go ahead and end the show here. I want to thank BJ and Alex for joining me today, helping me with all the stuff that I may have missed along the way. So really appreciate the knowledge and extra hand y'all provide. And obviously thanks to Astro Joe for taking care of questions and donations, and also all of the mods in the chat. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it off to BJ.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks Zach for guiding us here. It was a really good show, lots to see. I'm sure everyone was glad to get caught up after not getting to see what last week's progress was. But yeah, it was great to see a static fire this morning, and things are really moving forward. Should hopefully see Ship 34 transporting in the next couple days and see some more testing. But till that, let's head over to Alex.
Thanks everyone for joining us. It was a great show, and I don't have much to say except Super Bowl to watch, so I'll keep it short. And to Joe.
All right. Thanks, Zach, Alex, BJ. Always a pleasure sharing a stream with you. Thanks, Emlyn, for turning the knobs and pushing the buttons. Again, happy birthday, Mrs. RGV. Thanks, Mauricio, for getting these awesome pictures. And thanks, Astrogen, my lovely wifey, for rounding up the talent and scheduling everything. With that, I'll say most engines cut off. Hot staging confirmed. Love ya. Bye.